Chapter 533. This mountain of bones isn't that strong to begin with. However, Enchanting fought a great battle up there. His electrode golden body. I just randomly came up with this name. But his ability to use his metallized body to guide powerful electromagnetic fields is quite decent. It's precisely because of the ionization and electrolysis effects of high-voltage electricity that a large amount of bones were crushed and then glued back together. It's tantamount to refining and remodeling. What was originally a pile of broken bones has gone up in strength, and most of them have fused together. They won't break so easily. I can take them back and use them as souvenirs. I can sell them for 1,000,000 or 800,000. A white-haired old man was laughing and laughing as he analyzed the ruins left behind after the great battle in the seas outside Sia City on the inner world's famous professional review program, Physiognomy. That's right. Half of the credit for creating this mountain of bones belongs to Enchanting. But the structure of the mountain's terrain and laws should have nothing to do with him. He doesn't have this artistic sense. Plus, I feel that I should have seen a similar design a long time ago. That's right. That's right. It possesses the elements of the inner world. It has appeared before, but there hasn't been any trace of it for a long time. I've almost forgotten about it. Besides, you shouldn't be asking me this question. The gorgeous host's exaggerated expression of astonishment could be translated as, Motherf asterisk cur. Did we find a scammer to cheat us out of our appearance fees? Of course, this was just a misconception caused by the host's lack of skill. In reality, when the program Physiognomy spent a lot of money to invite this white-haired old man, the veteran extraordinary ghost I-Che, to participate in the program, the inner world's viewership ratings reached a terrifying 77% during last night's primetime slot. This kind of data meant that, aside from a portion of people who wandered the wilderness and didn't have the ability to watch, practically 99% of the inner world's members were watching and studying this program. Luo Nan, who had been diligently preparing for his lessons last night, became the 1% who didn't fit in with the group. So much so that when he ran this morning, he had to make up for his lessons and watch the broadcast. This white-haired old man with a gloomy name was famous in the inner world for being a disrespectful old man. He once used his X-ray vision ability to wreak havoc for a time, making countless enemies. But he was still able to live safely and steadily until now. From this, one could see how powerful his abilities were. At this moment, Che-E was smiling so widely that his eyes had turned into slits. This was most likely because of the beautiful MC he was partnered with. Only God knew what he saw in his eyes. Don't look at me with that kind of gaze. Don't you think it's more fun to dig deep into your body and mind than to look at this mountain of bones? You're taking advantage of me again. The beautiful MC cursed under her breath as she put on a curious expression. You mean, here, give me the controller. Yes, let's focus on it. The first-hand video from Zhang Ji's live stream was fast-forwarded under Che-Yi's control. When it reached the latter half, he pressed pause. Let's not talk about whether Zhang Ji's close-up was based on her looks. Don't you think that this young man, who originally had the same demeanor as me in the past, now looks a little out of character? The director took the opportunity to give a close-up so that all the ability users who were watching the show could clearly see Tian Bang, who was standing on top of White Bone Mountain at that time, with a focused and cold expression. Afterwards, the show was reduced to Che-Yi's old talk show. There was no longer any meaning in watching it. Luo Nan closed the video and let out a long breath of turbid air. The thought in his mind was, someone finally found out. Thanks to Major General Tian's godly assistance. Only now did the stimulation of the external sound waves to his auditory central nervous system arrive late. There was a process of deceleration and acceleration, so much so that Chinikuan's speech seemed particularly slow in the beginning. Then he suddenly accelerated in the middle, appearing to be several times faster than before. Even though there were all sorts of discomfort, Luo Nan was still able to obtain a gap to divert his attention. He was able to successfully receive external information that he should have naturally ignored. This was one of the applications of the organization technique. According to Dean Wanta's explanation, this was to actively exert influence on the external material waves. This caused the concurrent information flows to form a sequence of tasks that could be fully received and processed. In other words, it was to force the order of the external world to act according to the order and rules of the caster. This was to coordinate with the normal serial work of the human mind. From Luo Nan's perspective, the so-called influencing the material waves could be completely replaced with the mutual interference between the mental and material planes. But this didn't affect his understanding and practice of this principle. Right now, this was just a very basic application. At present, he could only process 2 audiovisual information sources at the same time at most, not to mention the obvious deformation caused by interfering with the information. He had to wait until he cultivated interference, sequencing, storage, release, processing, and execution to be completely natural, without the slightest trace of human interference. Only then could he be considered to have truly entered the next level. Luo Nan still had a great deal of practice to do in order to reach that step. So he didn't waste a bit of time. He absolutely wouldn't miss out on any occasions where he could use this technique. Perhaps it was the heavens' reward for his hard work, but the few sources of information he received this morning all told him good news. Chi Nikuan said, Senior Che has basically been making a fuss around White Bone Mountain. He has kept his mouth shut about Jin Tong's life and death, as well as the relevant battle deductions. And even though he's doing a program in the outer seas of Xia City, he's only messing around on the cruise ship. He has no intention of entering the country. His attitude has been relatively neutral so far. Is this considered good news? If he can maintain this attitude and leave immediately after the program ends, he can set an example and lead effect for many people. This is indeed good news. From the current situation, the restless situation caused by the 2016 billion in Xia City had actually been suppressed. Perhaps it was because hundreds of corpses had been strewn across number 9 and number 10 of Xia City in a single day and night. Perhaps it was because Jin Tong's life and death were unknown. Perhaps it was because the dark hand that colluded with the government, the military, and the merchant had been ruthlessly slapped. And Luo Nan wouldn't overlook the crucial role played by the Xia City branch in this matter. Half an hour ago, the finance committee controlled by Her Majesty Empress Wu had sent over the bill of honor points he had consumed yesterday. Compared to the impactful numbers in last week's general ledger, the daily accounts appeared dull and trivial. But the ledger that was pieced together bit by bit told him in the most direct way what kind of work the entire system of the Xia City branch had done in order to maintain this situation. And what kind of expenditure would it be if converted to the wealth of the secular world? But then again, Her Majesty Empress Wu didn't issue the bill to slap him in the face or make a fool of him. It wasn't to make him remember, reflect, or feel guilty. The practical significance lay in the fact that he had to take several dozen factors that appeared on the bill into consideration when formulating a battle plan. If he didn't do this, he would never be able to be considered comprehensive. He would always need others to wipe his ass from behind. It was absolutely not an easy task to take all the elements into consideration. Under normal circumstances, he needed an enormous staff. But the problem was that some extremely private personal elements could not be made public to the public. This was true even for Her Majesty Empress Wu and President Ouyang. Luo Nan, who was in the novice stage, needed to keep many more trump cards hidden. How to reconcile the relationship between thoroughness and secrecy was a problem that Luo Nan had to deal with. Her Majesty Empress Wu's requirement of being a match for 10,000 people corresponded with this. Luo Nan needed to frame the outline of a train of thought early on, and it couldn't be too small. He needed to have a clear goal, a broad layout, and even more, he needed to have a core method. When this backbone was determined, Her Majesty Empress Wu's bill could play an enormous role. He could use this to sort out clues, fill in loopholes, and stimulate inspiration. Right now, Luo Nan really did have an outline in his mind. He just needed to build a framework. He had already experienced success more than once. It was just that this time, the scope was much broader. Basically, as long as the soul cloak covered the area, as long as the Wraith sign and the other believers were effective, it was all within his attack and defense range. Yes, there were also the resources of the Xia City branch. He would never forget Her Majesty Empress Wu's warning. He even drew inferences from one example. Not only did he need to see the resources, he also needed to see the opposite of the resources. His battlefield was far vaster than he originally estimated. It was far more complex. But what was very miraculous was that as Luo Nan gained a deeper understanding of the situation, he unexpectedly discovered that his operating space within it was constantly growing. It was like the network of red dots on the three-dimensional map of Xia City this morning. It was an angle that he had never thought of before, but it was unexpectedly easy to get his hands on. As the incorporeal net woven by the Wraith sign continued to expand, the main thread of his actions erased the fog and color blocks at every moment, revealing his true appearance. This caused Luo Nan himself to be very shocked. Remember, this is just an illusion floating in my mind. Luo Nan reminded himself that all of these things couldn't be replaced by his fantasies and designs while running. He needed more preparation, more real experiments, and at the same time, he needed to be equipped with enough adaptability and hard power to make up for his flaws. Fortunately, he had already considered all of these factors in his earliest crude designs and had made certain arrangements. He saw the uncouth ghost eye make all sorts of conjectures about the Hill of Bones, and he felt that it was about time. But at this time, the virtual brain app became an X factor. It was still the same question. Would this sudden scan and analysis give him an additional trump card? Or would it make matters even more chaotic? After Luo Nan made his choice, this became the domain of the god of fate. Perhaps he could even pray to the moral integrity of a certain gene provider? Luo Nan stopped walking. An hour of running was nothing more than an insignificant warm-up, but his brain was operating at an ultra-high intensity, carrying out the rumbling operation of a deathly cross-country run. He even felt a bit dizzy when he came to a stop outside the community. This was a sign that he had consumed too much mental energy. It was just as Dean Wanta had said. The overall planning technique was never a technique that saved effort. It just allowed the brain to consume energy at the same time as it became more efficient. Chi Nikuan, who was running with him, gave him a thumbs up, turned around, and left. Luo Nan subconsciously paid attention to the virtual brain's interface, looking at the analysis progress of each new element. Then he saw, Jean Tong's soul light seed was still far ahead, and it simply looked like a bug had appeared. Analysis progress, 37%. The other 3 items added together were far from enough to make up for it. What was going on? Could it be that Jean Tong's specter was going to jump out after breakfast to take his life for revenge? Chapter 534. Today's breakfast time looked no different from the usual atmosphere. His uncle had just finished his duties as head chef. He sat in the main seat of the dining room and browsed the news. After his aunt finished arranging the bowls and chopsticks, she sternly berated the laziest Mo Peng to go downstairs. Mo Ya sat at the dining table early, but there was a diet meal placed in front of her. Though Mo Ya's figure was absolutely outstanding, who told the camera to make people look fat? Rumor has it that Ming Tang culture had made up its mind to let her have the golden edge of a high-quality idol outside of her identity as a rock singer. Mo Ya, who had yet to stabilize her footing, was still enduring silently for now. At least this was what Luo Nan believed. After the drowsy Mo Peng came down the stairs, his aunt turned to Luo Nan and said, "Are you free after school today?" "Oh, no." Luo Nan answered obediently. Actually, he already knew what his aunt wanted to say. According to the report from the director of Wanta, his aunt had already made some sort of mental preparation yesterday. She specifically made a phone call to make an appointment to go to the orphanage today. Naturally, she wanted to meet with Roy Wen. Sure enough, his aunt's next words were, "I've already been delayed for a day yesterday. I have to go to the orphanage today no matter what." According to what you said, a little girl like Roy Wen should be more sensitive mentally. Since we have to help her and take care of her, we can't be distant. You have good intentions. But you're thinking too much. Roy Wen was the most special person among the people Luo Nan knew. She was silent and reserved, and she naturally maintained a distance from others. She wasn't that serious. She was cold and aloof, but she was very obedient. Luo Nan felt that this little girl's way of thinking had already pulled apart from normal people during these 2 days of interaction. She was like a crow that mingled in the human world. She used a perspective that transcended the species to observe the world. No, perhaps she didn't even observe. She just drifted with the flow and lived. Luo Nan even thought that perhaps all of her willpower and pursuits had been completely extinguished the moment she stepped onto the road of adjudication and Jack died. Luo Nan obviously didn't wish for Roy Wen to become a walking corpse, but he didn't have any clues regarding this. Perhaps sending this little girl to a normal family life would cause her to change? But there was a very delicate problem. Could Luo Nan and his family provide this kind of life? It's okay. I went yesterday. After Amoya chopped up the lettuce with her dining knife, she felt a little better and finally had the mood to reply, Roy Wen, she's still very cute. That orphanage isn't bad either. Although the location isn't too good, the environment inside is really good. I heard that the entire design and decoration was done bit by director Wan and the children. It's simple and warm. It's really pleasing to the eye and has a lot of style. Then did you know that your sudden arrival caused chaos in the orphanage and also forced Roy Wen to cross a distance of 60 kilometers to flash back and act cute? Luo Nan buried his head in his kanji, cursing endlessly in his mind. Also, he actually thought that Roy Wen was very cute. Was this a sign that they were fated? In addition to praising Roy Wen and the environment of the orphanage, Amoya also had a good impression of Dean Wan Ta. That Dean Wan is also quite charming. He is a very dedicated and warm man. I heard that he used to be a traveler, but after he gained some enlightenment in the wilderness, he came back to do charity. He's a very down-to-earth person. Is that so? Sounds good. Although Mrs. Luo Shuqing always had a lot of opinions about Amoya's sloppiness, she also attached great importance to Amoya's insight and evaluation. She viewed them as an important reference. From this point of view, perhaps her aunt firmly believed that her eldest daughter was the one who truly inherited her innate bloodline? According to Amoya's words, she slightly revised her train of thought. How about we bring Roy Wen out for a meal today? The whole family will go and find a nearby restaurant. 2 people will go to the orphanage and bring Roy Wen out. I'm afraid that too many people will disturb the other children. Luo Nan felt admiration in his heart. Empress Dowager, you've really thought things through thoroughly. However, Mrs. Luo Shuqing proved that she had thought things through more than he imagined in the next moment. Oh right. I'm going to contact worker Zhai. Huh. The child he's sponsoring is called Diweiwu. He's with Roy Wen. There's no harm in inviting them over. With these children together, it's the same as having a small party. It's not too restrictive. Unfortunately, time is too tight. Otherwise, the effect would be better at home. Luo Nan blinked his eyes. You really are thinking too much. Mo Peng had just defeated the Sandman, so he came to his senses now. He appeared very surprised. You're saying that I'm going to this party? You're voluntarily withdrawing from this family group? Of course not. I'm saying that the low-altitude public transport is too slow. I won't be able to make it in time for dinner. Who's going to pick me up after school? Mo Haihang spoke calmly from the main seat. Let your mom make a detour. As compensation, I'll send Luo Nan off today. This kind of fairness is really shameful. Mo Peng was like a dog in grief and indignation, but he could only swallow the bone his parents threw at him. Luo Nan turned his gaze in slight astonishment. Mo Haihang lowered his head to look at the flashing news information on his desk once more. It was as if those words just now were the most simple and last-minute decision. 15 minutes later, Luo Nan sat in his uncle's family SUV. At the same time, he mentally prepared himself to face the interrogation once more. With this mentality, the gaze he cast at the driver's seat was actually quite bitter. You didn't do any proper work in class yesterday, did you? Looking up information and data wasn't a big deal. Finding false information wasn't a problem either. But that was all bought with points. Luo Nan really felt tired from dealing with such a scheming elder. But unexpectedly, his uncle continued the topic of Roy Wen on the road. He probed more into Rui Wen's temperament, mental state, and other elements. These were the things Luo Nan had been mulling over all this time. It was inevitable that he would say a few more words. He would discuss how to better integrate Rui Wen into the world of normal people. With that, he could not help but relax. He took the opportunity to use his half-baked strategic planning technique to simulate a parallel mission. Aside from the conversation, he could also look at the virtual brain app. Though Jean Tong didn't have any more vengeful souls after breakfast, its Soul Light Seeds analysis progress was still at the forefront. It had already broken through the 60% threshold. There really was nothing that could stop it from advancing like a hurricane. Luo Nan felt a bit uneasy about this kind of bug-level analysis progress, but he was looking forward to it even more. Perhaps after this analysis was completed, he would be able to have a more intuitive understanding of the core of the virtual brain app. Looking at the interface of the app too much really made him irritated. His thoughts swept across the starry sky interface, and he would make new discoveries from time to time. He was certain that there were many functions hidden within this interactive interface. But correspondingly, there would be undecipherable characters. Even though they all belonged to the same hieroglyphic system, even though many of them looked familiar, Luo Nan was unable to decipher them no matter how hard he tried. Interaction was impossible, and the functions were limited. Luo Nan couldn't operate a single one of them. So it was said that characters were the natural moat. The obstruction of characters was the division between civilizations. Luo Nan couldn't help but think. Could it be that an inconceivable civilization truly existed behind the external neuron? Like aliens? Perhaps those undecipherable hieroglyphic characters were the carriers of an alien civilization? Similar thoughts had appeared more than once, but it was hard to form a conclusion. Luo Nan nearly believed that the road to school was going to pass amidst family conversations and meaningless fantasies. Then he suddenly heard a sentence, "Your search index is very high right now." Huh? Luo Nan's head went numb the instant his uncle's words entered his ears. He immediately raised the priority of the conversation mission to the highest level, but it was of no use. What are you talking about? Mo Haihang switched topics with ease, and he struck right at the pit of Luo Nan's stomach. Yesterday, I asked a friend at headquarters to do a rough understanding. I can't calculate the specific details, and we don't have that much authority. But if we just consider the search volume and relevance of information related to you from the inner world for the past 2 months, your ranking is quite high. I'm talking about excluding the local information of Xia City. We only calculate the feedback from other regions to Xia City, including Quantum Corporation and some other sensitive enterprises. Of all the SCA members in the Xia City branch, your search index is ranked second. You are second only to a powerful person nicknamed Her Majesty Empress Wu. But starting from last Saturday, the relevant data suddenly fell below the average line. A statistical difference has appeared. Is it because the urgent situation has attracted everyone's attention? Or is there some other factor interfering? Luo Nan was able to maintain a normal expression right now. This was the limit of what he could do. But what was the point? Mo Haihang turned his gaze to meet Luo Nan's gaze. I feel like you're doing quite well over there. Are you a celebrity member? All right, Luo Nan admitted that his brain was muddled. His planning technique was directly broken. He went in a few circles before he had a rough idea of what was going on. It couldn't be said that the Xia City branch's intelligence work wasn't diligent. If his uncle only understood from the local area of Xia City and went to a separate organization to understand, there would certainly be no flaws. But this old man just bypassed all of this. He set his hand on the flow of information and made deductions. This really couldn't be covered up. The only way was to completely erase all the incoming and outgoing information. But how was that possible? Could Xia City be erased? What about the entire inner world? The inner world could be erased, but what about Quantum Corporation? Luo Nan's thoughts were too naive. Could he get a refund now? His uncle didn't have any intentions of continuing to pursue the matter. Instead, he was laughing. He was really laughing, without any other emotions mixed in. You people of the Luo family are all like this. It's like you can gather the gazes of others no matter where you go. From the wilderness to the city, you're all like this. It's just that Shu Qing is a bit more low-key. Luo Nan mumbled, unable to speak. We should celebrate. You're able to continue the path of your grandfather and your parents. I've always admired them. I once wanted to participate, but in the end, I wasn't able to enter the door. At most, I was at the level of an archivist. So, there are times when I'm jealous. There will always be a chasm between normal people and abnormal people. I can only comfort myself by saying that it's the distance between a genius and a madman. Mo Haihang knocked on the control panel as he spoke. The virtual screen lit up, displaying a traditional 2D photo. Let me show you something new. The two madmen of your Luo family. Chapter 535. There were two people in the photo. Luo Nan was familiar with them, but he also felt that they were strangers. They both wore white lab coats as they stood on the cracked and warped red earth. The one on the left was an old man with gray hair. Although he was much healthier than he was now, Luo Yuandao could still see that this was his grandfather. There was also a young man who was a bit handsome. His appearance was vaguely similar to the old man. Luo Nan's facial outline could be found in the photo. This was undoubtedly Luo Nan's father, Luo Zhongheng. Both of them had unkempt beards. Their hair had probably not been taken care of for some time. It was messily scattered across their foreheads. Both of them had taut faces and looked serious. However, the scene they displayed was worthy of a round of laughter from the bystanders. The two of them had serious faces, but they posed like a comical comic book pose. Their bodies were half to the side, one to the left and one to the right. They swung their arms and kicked their legs. Their forelimbs were bent and their heads and necks were in an upright and unafraid pose. It was like the most tragic scene of Swan Lake. Luo Nan really did laugh. Perhaps this was the first time in many years that he had seen someone reveal a smile. It was really hard to imagine what kind of situation this was taken under. Look, it's a weird photo of your grandfather and father. Supposedly, the person who took the photo is your mother. You've never seen it before, right? Do you want it? Cough, I don't. That good-for-nothing dad of yours once told me that if you really get involved in this field, no matter how well or badly you develop, you can feel their feelings at the time. You can see happiness in the midst of confusion. You can see difficulties in the midst of success. However, I usually cut it in the middle and make 100 copies of the one on the right. I'll throw darts and play. You can try it. Okay. The rest of the journey was very short. The two didn't talk too much. Luo Nan received the digital photo. The pixels were fine. There were no problems placing it on the flexible e-ink screen or using the external neuron to browse with his consciousness. Luo Nan hadn't considered how to design the darts yet. He just looked at the photo over and over again in a short amount of time. He looked at the image of the fellow. It seemed that the person wasn't just a gloomy and mysterious person that made people loathe. The flat photo gave the figure an extra side profile, making it more distinct. The SUV drove to the school gate like this. But Luo Nan only woke up from a dream when Mo Haihang shouted. He raised his head. Mo Haihang knocked on the steering wheel. It's time. It won't be too late to look later. Don't be late. Luo Nan's reaction was like a thief who had been caught in the act. He closed his notebook with a bang, and the speed of his actions had already exceeded the normal range. However, he also knew that his reaction was too much, so he subconsciously covered it up. Uncle, do you still have similar photos or something? Hide. For example, my mother's photo. I've only seen a few photos of her since I was young. Most recently, I discovered. Luo Nan paused and swallowed the words tree whole back into his stomach. But this question was indeed what he wanted to ask. After hearing the identity of the photographer, he even hoped that the angle of the photo would move forward and include the scene outside the lens. Mo Haihang was taken aback for a moment before he broke into laughter. You've asked this question more than once. Huh. Luo Nan really didn't have much of an impression. When he was very young, around 6 or 7 years old. At that time, you probably just understood what life was and what death was. You cried and threw a tantrum, wanting to find your mother's photo. But in the end, you couldn't find it. Later on, you gradually stopped mentioning it. So you've forgotten? Mo Haiheng was a bit surprised, but then he shook his head. There used to be a lot of photos, but there really weren't any at home. Before that bastard of a father of yours left home, he took away all of their photos, including the recorded videos. There were only a few single photos left. I heard that Qingwen didn't really like to be photographed. The majority of the photos he left behind were of him and your father. Luo Nan never thought that he would inadvertently hear this kind of information. He was a bit stupefied for a time. But a sudden quivering jolted him out of his bewildered and warm state in just half a second. 2 seconds later, the security team that had been following them all this time sent out a warning. Suspected sniper. 20 clock. Distance 2,700. Altitude 104. This was a simple warning only for Luo Nan. The corresponding tactical coordinates were transmitted to the members of the team through other channels. Luo Nan didn't need this warning. He just received a reminder. There was still an immeasurable distance between him and an ordinary, simple, and regretful life. And there was a tendency for the distance to gradually grow. Such reality made him feel helpless and resentful. But he couldn't show it on his face. He could only brew it in his heart. Luo Nan took a deep breath. Then he revealed a smile to his uncle. I remember now. So I need to go through it properly when I get home, right? Then, I'll see you tonight. He prepared to open the door and get out of the car as he spoke. Mo Haiheng reminded him from within the car. Don't forget about the dinner tonight. Also, bring an umbrella when it rains. Oh. Luo Nan didn't mind being drenched by the freezing rain he had personally created, but he still obediently picked up the portable umbrella he had prepared. Soon the umbrella unfurled. At nearly the same time, a low curse came from several kilometers away under the curtain of rain. The corner of Luo Nan's lips twitched slightly. He waved his hand at his uncle in the car and walked over the wet ground toward the campus. But Mo Haiheng called out to him before he even took 2 steps. Luo Nan. Luo Nan turned his head and walked back subconsciously. But Mo Haiheng had him walk around the car to the driver's seat. Luo Nan walked over in a daze. He lowered his head and saw the car window roll down. He was just about to ask what was going on when he saw Mo Haiheng reach out and pinch his cheeks. It must be said that the relationship between this uncle and nephew was harmonious, but their body language was always very restrained. From their perspective, this was an intimate contact that was rarely seen in over a decade. Luo Nan's face was a bit distorted as he stood outside the car window in a daze. Mo Haiheng laughed as he rubbed Luo Nan's apple cheeks. Whether it's me, Moya, or Mo Peng, all of us might end up throwing darts at your face one day. Rather than that, it's better to do this to your face. You understand, right? Luo Nan's face didn't hurt, but there was a problem with his fine control. In the end, he could only grin. Even though his cheeks were still being pinched, he still nodded forcefully. His uncle let go and Luo Nan turned around. He was in a sorry state a moment ago, but now he was calm. It was precisely because he understood that he had to do it. Mo Haiheng's car drove away, but Luo Nan didn't look back. He walked slowly towards the campus and sent a message to the security team at the same time. Target eliminated. Malice value full. Threat level low. A whistle came from the other side. It came from Cat Eyes. Pitiful observer. That brother just took a scope. But he still has a gun box next to him. These observers were often not members of the inner world. They were only active in the gray area where the mortal world and the inner world intersected. They certainly wouldn't be the main attackers, but they could become professional criminals at any time as long as the order was given and the reward was in place. It wasn't a big deal to kill a small bug like a chicken. But if the brain of a monkey was smashed to pieces, the results should be even better. Luo Nan spun the handle of his umbrella, stirring up the curtain of rain around him. It just so happened to be the experimental stage. So let's begin. East of Xia City was over 200 nautical miles away from the original discovery site of White Bone Mountain. This was already the international waters region. A certain luxurious yacht bobbed up and down in this sea region. Light, electrical waves, and sound interweaved together in a cabin on the second floor. Number 4's foot eyes have gone blind. 'Cause of death? Basically, it can be determined to be the dripping sword. The sensors have responded, and the cranial pressure has clearly risen. Excellent. He's also confirmed that the area within a 10-second interval and a radius of 2,700 meters isn't a safe zone. Plus, he's sent back a clear image. Right now, number 5 is already on standby. Oh, this scum. He broke the contract and ran away. Where's number 6? Have him stand by at an observation point 5 kilometers away. Then the only suitable location is Cloud City Water Village. Are you going to have him dance a cheek-to-cheek dance with the members of the Xia City branch? Maybe the dance partner is a devil ray? In any case, I'm not the one dancing. I'm not the one paying either. Someone grumbled at this time, why are they called eyes? Are their photoreceptors bad? Because you won't be able to find 120 million similar professionals. Fine. I just feel that this will damage our luck value. Luck value is only meaningful when probability plays a role. Even if all things are probabilities, to break through the scale and enter reality. Hee hee. Even though they were all observers, they all had the code name Eyes. But observers were also divided into ranks. Those who raised their sniper scopes to observe from a distance of several kilometers and ended up having their heads blown up were cannon fodder level observers. Observers like them, who were drinking wine and sipping coffee in the seas outside of Xia City, calmly summarizing and analyzing the information transmitted by cannon fodder, were high-level observers. If they could still get their heads blown up in the vast seas 1,000 kilometers away from Xia City, then they could only accept it. Even with the logic of the inner world, this wasn't a possibility. Naturally, they were very relaxed. After selecting a few clear images, someone suggested, how about we let that high-level SCA employee go on a mission? It's just a matter of one command. Isn't that too much? It's not like we need him to cross the Pacific Ocean. Transferring between cities will put Xia City in a very difficult situation. They're all staff planners. I get nightmares every night just thinking about this sort of temporary assignment. But the SCA isn't a fool. It seems like quite a few high-level members ran off on a vacation yesterday. How crazy would they be to dare do something like this under these circumstances? And so this topic ended. But soon, someone proposed an improvement. Comparatively speaking, I feel like it's easier to mobilize the big sister singer of the Guardians. As long as there's an assignment, it's not a problem for her to run all 24 districts in a day. The company behind her, Mingtang Culture, is a very qualified commercial company, and she just so happens to need to increase her exposure. Another person interjected, what's up with the label on this Mingtang Culture? Oh, there's the shadow of the Castlevania financial group behind it as an investor, but the Blood Flame Order has already run away. They can basically be considered a motherless child. Capital can easily cross the Pacific Ocean. But supernatural power can't. Chapter 536. Someone immediately came to a realization, you want the Blood Flame Order to take the blame? Logically speaking, it's completely plausible. They're anxious to regroup and make up for their losses in Xia City. They also want to borrow their previous connections to get closer to the water pavilion. Look, this is normal, right? But Mo Luan is already dead. What will they use to fight against two extraordinaries? Relying on the Black Widow's seduction? Isn't that a bit too old? After a burst of strange laughter, he added a suggestion, we can arrange a sufficient number of collaborators for them. This will take some time to pick and choose, but we don't need a century of lies. And there's one more point. It's more important than logic. There's more. It's the time node. Look, the Blood Flame Order's founding celebration is on December 21st. It's less than 10 days from now. The base of believers in the headquarters of Xia City has been attacked, and the elders have died. If they don't do anything, then they might have to experience the most miserable holy day of the establishment of the religion since the split of the order. Perhaps that would be the moment of complete collapse. You all know that when it comes to worship and faith, that's the best reason. Bang bang bang. The sound of knocking on the table rang out. A group of eyes slapped the table and cried out in praise, Motherf *Ker. Now that you mention it, I feel like the Blood Flame Order wouldn't stir up trouble. It's simply illogical. Soon, this group of high-level observers perfected their brilliant ideas into a plan. It was the result of their observation today, sealed, stored, and sent. After the small excitement passed, everyone returned to a state of boredom. After all, there weren't just one or two similar ideas and plans in these 2 days. It wasn't just 8 or 10 either. It was dozens or hundreds. A person in charge of organizing sighed, all of them have designs on the protectors. Aunts, uncles, older sisters, older brothers, and even aunts and aunts. It looks like a plate of sweet and sour, tasty, soft persimmons. The cabin rumbled with laughter. This group of eyes had the most right to speak on this topic. He was the first to express his stance, but he's not an extraordinary. Youngsters will always do foolish things due to impulsiveness. The Xia City branch may seem powerful, but they've already sunk into the gutter. They let a child affect their plans. Even if the child's future is bright, talent doesn't equal intelligence. I heard that the kid still doesn't agree to the safe house plan. He wants to maintain his original pace of life. Then life will teach him how to be a man. The offense is easy and delightful, and the defense is battered and exhausted. Even if it doesn't produce any direct results, it's still good to consume some of Xia City's resources. Wasn't there news that the voices of dissent within the Xia City branch were quite loud? If we can cook the frog in warm water and create conflict between them, or even turn them into enemies, it will save us a lot of trouble. In such a favorable situation, someone raised an objection. But this will slow down the pace. Very quickly, the objection was rebutted. Slowing down the pace is more advantageous for us. Xia City is just a mere branch. Even if they have 2 extraordinaries and a bunch of unreliable allies, they will grind them to death sooner or later if they really wanted to go against the entire world. This was almost everyone's consensus, and it was politically correct. It was unknown which idiot broke a piece of paper. The problem is that the alliance outside might not be reliable. There was a sudden silence in the cabin, not even the sound of breathing could be heard. Fortunately, there was someone who laughed in time. I originally thought it would be a short trip. If we really were to float in the freezing rain for 10 days to half a month, my d*ck would shrink a little. When I go back to shore and find some fun, that would be a real misery. The group of observers roared with laughter. The idiot who just made a slip of the tongue laughed especially loudly. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to dispel the awkwardness between everyone. There was also someone who continued with a senseless joke, "Be content. The cabin is clearly so hot it's like a bird's nest puddles." Huh? The person who spoke wanted to ask, who raised the temperature so high, but then he saw a human silhouette appear on the cabin wall directly in front of him. It was like a strange relief sculpture that suddenly appeared before his eyes. Moreover, this relief sculpture was alive. In the blink of an eye, it stepped inside. It was as if the metallic wall was nothing but a laughable illusion. The temperature within the cabin rose by a large margin. It rose by more than 20 to 30 degrees in an instant. Everyone felt a scorching heat wave assault their faces. It didn't matter if it was an illusion or not, such a scene couldn't possibly be a joke. Enemy attack. At least half of the people in the cabin jumped up. Although they were observers sitting in the office, they were all above average ability users. At a time like this, the equipment all over the cabin was useless. They had to rely on themselves. Some people fell under the table at the first moment to hide, and through their own channels, they sent out warnings and distress messages. There were also full-time combat and security personnel on the ship, but until now, they hadn't done a good job of security. No matter who was in the cabin, there was an unsolvable doubt in their hearts. Who was the attacker? How did he board the ship? After a short half a second, all doubts became meaningless. The first person to discover it, and also the person who jumped the earliest, suddenly withered. His facial features and 7 orifices spurted out blood-red flames, and his exposed skin wrinkled, as if all the water had been sucked out in an instant, and without a doubt, all the vitality had been sucked out. Blood flames. Amidst the scream, another person was hit by the blood flames and fell to the ground with a scream. Outside the cabin, the footsteps and shouts of the security personnel were already concentrated. Even before the footsteps, the cabin door rumbled. The strongest person on the ship, the B-class expert Su Hu, had already broken through the door, wanting to catch the attacker unprepared. However, at this time, the attacker's human figure once again turned into nothingness. His originally substantial body turned into a strange smoke that surged like fog, and countless sparks burst out from it. All the people in the cabin were hit by the rain and dew, and no one could avoid it. Suffocating fog, shattering fire. F***ck me. Su Hu couldn't help but curse. At the same time, he dashed out of the cabin door at an even faster speed, knocking into the security personnel behind him and sending them flying. He was actually saving someone. Almost at the instant he retreated, the cabin exploded with a rumble. Flames with a bewitching and thick blood color chased after his figure, spurting out from the cabin door and forming a ferocious flame tongue. The impact even blasted through the corridor, the cabin walls, and a small part of the ship's hull, flickering in the freezing rain on the sea surface. The security personnel at the door were swaying left and right. In the end, only 2 or 3 unlucky people were burned to charcoal. This was already the best result. As for the cabin where the high-ranking observers were, it was completely filled with the blood flames, and miserable screams rang out incessantly. There wasn't a single struggle of life inside, only the despairing wails of life as it turned to ash. Just as they expected, they indeed didn't encounter the dripping sword domain. However, outside of their logic and imagination, there was a blood flame massacre that came straight to their door. As the highest person in charge of the security team, the B-class expert Su Hu's face was ashen, and he didn't say a word. His subordinates were still trying to extinguish the fire. He didn't stop them, but he knew that this was a meaningless action. Blood seizes the soul, flames destroys the body. Under such a vicious blood flame, even if the eyes were forcibly dragged out of the fire, there was no hope of survival. Reality proved his judgment. By the time the security personnel extinguished the flames, 80 to 90% of the people in the fire were dead. Those who were temporarily hanging on to life had large areas of burns. The fire poison had invaded their internal organs, and most of their bodies were cooked. It was better to die. As for the assailants, they had long since flown away into the distance. Their whereabouts were unknown. Su Hu stepped into the fire, and he nearly stepped on a certain eye, on the verge of death. This high-ranking observer was nearly burnt to the floor. He unconsciously moaned. Su Hu's hearing was exceptional, so he could hear it clearly. The blood flame order has gone mad. The spider has gone mad. No matter how strong the winds of the seas outside of Xia City were, it was impossible to blow the moans and the smell of burnt flesh 1,000 kilometers away onto dry land. There was no need to even mention the distant region that was separated by a metropolis. 150 kilometers west of the satellite city of Xia City, Anzhong, was an undulating hilly region. It was also the complete scope of the wilderness. And at the northeastern edge of the hilly region, there was a cave building that was carved into the inside of the hill. It was known as the Picnic Inn. The architectural style of the Picnic Inn was extremely vagrant. It was said that several decades ago, it was the settlement area of a vagrant tribe. But now, its main function was to provide food, lodging, and supplies. It belonged to the explorers, wilderness vagrants, and other complex groups of people. It was also one of the most legal civilian facilities in the wilderness. Johnny was the seventh owner of the Picnic Inn. The reason why he bought this place was obviously because it could make money, a lot of money. But there was another secondary reason. The Picnic Inn was located behind the District 27 infrasonic array of Sia City. It was located behind the permanent fortifications, and it could give customers a stronger sense of security. But ever since the appearance of the humanoid infrasonic array in Sia City, several similar permanent fortifications surrounding Sia City had dropped in importance. The Picnic Inn also became the target of ridicule for the tourists. Luckily, Johnny didn't count on it to make a living. Instead, he really liked the popularity of this topic, the large amounts of information, and the explosive increase in income. Ever since the night of December 8th, Sia City entered into a state of emergency. The number of people staying in the Picnic Inn and the number of customers increased explosively. 99% of the current guests came for the Miss 2000 and the humanoid infrasonic array. And the Sia City branch's refusal order had a bit of effect. This group of losers who wanted to take advantage of the situation were like a group of red-eyed mice. They were drooling over the fragrant bait, but they didn't dare to step into the iron cage filled with killing intent. They could only wander around the outskirts of Sia City. During these 2 days, there were a few people or teams that accepted employment to infiltrate Sia City for an adventure. There were also some people or teams that were still looking for opportunities. Johnny loved this kind of atmosphere to death. Just the information on student Luo's relatives brought him millions of dollars in income. The corresponding risks were not worth mentioning. Who made him a member of the Sia City branch? Johnny sat in the corner of the second floor of the cave. He was calculating how to upgrade his information. Perhaps he could participate in student Luo's beginner class? If student Luo was able to live until the 14th, then many people would be interested in his ability. When the time came, he would add, shocking. So this is the source of Luo Nan's ability, and so on. Just by posting it on the internet, he could make a killing. But what should he do during this period of time? Chapter 537. Johnny was still immersed in the atmosphere of his money-making plan. He did not react for a moment. Which bays? The lobby manager pursed his lips. The one from the Order of Justice. What kind of situation is this? He's still acting like a lord here. Do you really think this is still 2 months ago? Ever since the incident at Frost River Reality, the Order of Justice had lost 2 priests, Wang and Enchanting. Their core combat force, the Ablatum Knights, were almost completely wiped out. Their follow-up reinforcements had yet to arrive. This branch of the Order of Justice had sunk into its weakest period. First Ablatum Zheng Shao, who was currently in charge, had never been a powerful character. Faced with this complicated situation, his first order was to withdraw and wait for further orders. He had even disposed of a number of properties. The Wild Inn that Johnny had purchased contained a portion of the Order of Justice's shares. Now that they had all been withdrawn, the lobby manager's mood was as expected. You don't even have a share, so why are you still pretending to be a big-tailed wolf? Johnny originally wanted to chat with the lobby manager about the art of management, but his sharp eyes, honed from years of chaos, discovered that one of his most important sources of information had entered the tavern. Johnny waved his hand. So what if he eats and drinks? A B-rank powerhouse should have this kind of treatment. The lobby manager sneered. He's an Ablatum Knight. Without a priest behind him, how can he be considered a B-rank? That's still 100 times better than a sissy like you who sells butts. Johnny sneered in his heart, but in the end, he just said, all right, let him drink as he pleases for now. If he really gets drunk, he'll spit out 1 or 2 of the Order of Justice's core secrets and change hands. He can even earn back a wine cellar. He dismissed the lobby manager with just a few words, telling this fake man, who was pinching his thumb and middle finger, to scram. Johnny sighed with emotion at the demeanor and knowledge that a professional manager should have. He swept his eyes over the bar on the first floor, and his eyelids twitched. Blood energy. That was a super drink that could only be purchased with honor points and other channels from the inner world. But not only did Baze gulp it down like a whale, he even used it as a topping. At this moment, even Johnny was suspicious. Could it be that the bastard knew that his shares had been withdrawn, so he came here to play the fool? But as the boss, since he had already spoken, he could only brace himself and persevere. At this time, the source of information had already arrived on the second floor. He waved at the person. "Hey, black box. F***CKU, it's a metal box. It's just a name, there's no difference. However, if you can take out something better, I can even call you treasure." Pretending to be intimate, they exchanged a few vulgarities and bumped fists. The two of them sat on opposite sides of the table and entered into transaction mode. Unlike Johnny, who was an outer member of the society, Iron Box was a member of the Xia City branch's action team. He was a core force that the society put more effort into nurturing. Therefore, they had a natural advantage in obtaining information. In the past, the Xia City branch was in a state of leaking on all sides. People like Metal Box had at least opened a window. Because of this, when faced with the gradual tightening of internal discipline, this brother was also full of complaints. "We really can't F***King survive now. We're purely blast walls, facing the nuclear explosion head-on, and then dying a worthless death. I must leave this place as soon as possible. That's why I'm in need of money and travel expenses." Johnny chuckled. "For the sake of our many years of cooperation, I'm willing to raise more money for you. But for the final project, we have to find a highlight or explosive point. F***CKU, maybe I should put some juicy meatballs in your mouth. Because of your terrible attitude, the prices of goods in Xia City have increased by a notch." Both sides used intimate and ferocious attitudes to carry out a close exchange. 15 minutes later, they finally reached an agreement with great difficulty. Iron Box once again raised his travel expenses, and Johnny obtained relevant information about a certain orphanage as well as the predetermined plans of the Xia City branch's action team for the next few days. Iron Box didn't care if the price was satisfactory or not. He walked down with a dark face as per usual. Johnny wouldn't tell him that this was the origin of the black box. "What? You're talking about black box operations?" At their level, they weren't worthy. But soon, Johnny lost the mood to tease Iron Box. In these 15 minutes, Baze ruined at least 2 points worth of good wine in front of the bar on the first floor of the cave. He smoothly knocked away half of Johnny's earnings, and he even continued to do so. This time, not only Johnny's eyelids twitched, even his eyebrows and apple cheeks were twitching. But he really didn't have the guts to clash with this famous muscleman of Xia City. Yes, this was the most fundamental reason. What the eye doesn't see, the heart doesn't grieve Johnny. He left his seat with a taut face and returned to his private room in the next floor of the cave. There was a time limit for the information. He had to make them pay as soon as possible. But not long after he returned to his room, the lobby manager made a phone call before he could even log into the dark web. Actually, there was no need. The cave Johnny resided in was already shaking. He only heard a worthless report. Baze stopped Iron Box and splashed him in the face. Then they started fighting. F***CK this black dog. Johnny finally couldn't help but curse. The problem was that it was meaningless. The worst thing was that the situation in the first floor of the cave quickly went out of control. For the first 30 seconds, the sissy could still cry to him about the loss of assets and casualties. But after a deafening explosion, there was no more sound from the other side. Johnny immediately made a call to the security captain of the Wild Inn. But the news he obtained made his blood boil and his vision darken. The security team he paid millions of dollars in salary every month was practically all dead. As for the two leading figures he invited to watch the scene, they didn't even have the time to exchange blows with the Ablatum Knight blessed by the priestess before they were drowned in the indescribably excited crowd of guests and drinkers. Right now, there was already a chaotic battle downstairs. Most of the people came for one purpose, but there were too many monks and not enough gruel. What 2000s or 16 billion? They never said that they could split it evenly. Perhaps many people had the mentality of the big shots eat the meat, and we drink the soup, but wouldn't it be better if there were fewer people drinking the soup? Hidden competition and suppression were always present, and the corresponding hostility and hatred were also accumulating layer by layer. With a big target, these, gunpowder, could still be controlled. They were temporarily stacked in everyone's hearts, but the premise was that they did not go off by accident. Johnny's scalp was about to explode. If the chaos continued, the accumulated gunpowder would completely explode. Even if this wild and could still be preserved, it would soon welcome its 8th boss. Every time this happened, the previous boss would always end up in a bad situation. He began to make frantic calls to various investors, as well as to the real big shots in the vicinity. The military had shares here, and they would occasionally receive some filial piety. Not to mention anything else, as long as they sent a small team, even if it was just for show. With a muffled bang, the floor clearly shook, and Johnny almost bounced up. He turned his head in shock and saw that the floor, which was compacted with red earth and reinforced with steel bars, had been forcibly pierced through. Half of the body of the metal box, who had just completed the transaction with Johnny, drilled out of the hole. His head was flat and deformed, and it looked like his spine was already broken. One of his eyeballs had exploded out of his eye socket, and the remaining eye still had a dark red bloody hole. The metal box blankly looked forward, meeting Johnny's gaze head-on. The hair on Johnny's thighs stood on end when he faced this scene. Then right after, the door with 3 layers of protection was kicked open. Baze, who was still clutching a bottle of blood energy, grinned as he staggered through the door. Soon, his boot landed, and half of the metal box's body fell down. A muffled sound rang out, and then there was no more sound. Baze, you're crazy. At this moment, Johnny's voice was so sharp that it surpassed that of his lobby manager. He had completely forgotten what was the correct attitude. He could only rely on his instincts to shout, "I'm a member of the Sia City branch." He only remembered that a member had been kicked down the stairs when he spoke to this point. His voice came to an abrupt halt. Baze grinned and shook the bottle at Johnny. "This wine is pretty good." The sound of the bottle shattering rang out at the same time as the sound of ribs and flesh exploding. The remains of the bottle smashed through Johnny's chest and acted like a nail, nailing him to the wall. Blood and internal organ fragments sprayed out, and soon they dyed a large portion of the floor red. They even flowed down the hole that the metal box had smashed through. Johnny's eyes were wide open, and his mouth was wide open. His remaining breath and life force mixed with his blood surged out from within. Baze's savage smile dissipated from his dilated pupils. Baze slightly leaned his body to the side, and he piously knelt down on one knee. He placed one hand on the ground, and the other on his chest. "All glory to my Lord." The scenery before Johnny's eyes blurred, and his dazed consciousness seemed to enter another space. He saw layers upon layers of grids. They were like the interweaving and spreading spider webs of a damp jungle. They stuck to every nook and cranny of the void. Everything trembled on the spider web, including his life force and consciousness that had yet to dissipate. This strange structure was dyed with a dark red color of blood. His soul seemed to be hooked by a strand of spider silk, moving up the layers of the spider web. But how deep and boundless was this web? He couldn't see the end at all. He could only vaguely see the shadow of a blood-red sun in the distant deep space. There were many limbs branching out from its edges, twisting and moving. It was like a malevolent demonic spider. It illuminated everything, controlled everything, and destroyed everything. Johnny's train of thought came to an end here. Fortunately for him, the wild and managed by the 7th boss was able to endure the destructive blow in the end. Even though a portion of the structure had collapsed, the main body still existed. It was just that moving the corpses outside really took quite a bit of effort. News and blood from the sea and inland were transmitted back to Sia City through all sorts of channels. It was already noon by the time it was widely disseminated. Luo Nan had just finished school. He returned to Gear with Shuelei and ate lunch with Rui Wan and his own security team. The opportunity to freely use the building of Gear was decreasing with each passing moment. He treasured this opportunity exceptionally. However, someone soon interrupted the meal process. Before, I only knew that you were a third-generation researcher. Yeah, you're the third generation of a family of researchers. But could it be that you're also a hidden aristocrat of a secret order? Have the Blood Flame Order and the Order of Justice already crawled beneath your feet? Zhang Yingying's mouth expressed her emotions without restraint, and Luo Nan didn't need to do anything. He just had a wooden expression, and this was more than enough. Chapter 538. At least at this moment, no one believed that Luo Nan had anything to do with the Blood Flame Order. Also, the General of the Order of Justice going crazy over at the Wild and had nothing to do with him. Zhang Yingying was just teasing him. From her perspective, those observers really did court death. A portion of the communication records and recordings of the scene were salvaged. Apparently, those people think that the Blood Flame Order is a plucked phoenix that can be cooked into soup at any time. They want to do something bad and frame them. They don't understand how terrifying Xia City's Earth Fiend is. They just so happened to bump into a powerful member of the Blood Flame Order passing by, and they casually wiped him out. Cat eyes beamed as she sipped her drink. She gave her own opinion, or is it an even more crude framing? Zhang Yingying nodded. It was done too simply. It wasn't ruthless enough, but it's definitely the core method of the Blood Flame Order. This is interesting. You must know that the Blood Flame Order is also branching out. The military must be very embarrassed. The situation here is subtle, but the Wild Inn is too messed up. A chaotic battle broke out, and the casualty rate exceeded 65%. They were so savage that they had no friends. It's not bad for you, but there are people in the society who were caught in the crossfire. You know about Metal Box, right? You have to show some appreciation later. Oh. Luo Nan responded. He didn't care about a little bit of money when it came to the funeral expenses. Zhang Yingying did not contact him just to broadcast news and ridicule. She also talked about the schedule of the elementary seminar on the night of the 14th. In order to take care of your time, your class is scheduled at night. Worker Zhai's exchange of insights is before yours. Huh. Hold on, why is Worker Zhai's first? Luo Nan suddenly reacted. He unconsciously drew in a breath of cold air. Aren't discussions always put at the back? There's no point in discussing problems that can't be solved. Her Majesty wants you to be responsible for solving problems. She said that she just wants to broaden her horizons and train of thought. You don't even know what she's thinking. You go up and start bragging, and all you brag is common stuff. Do you want others to laugh at you for the rest of your life, or at Her Majesty for the rest of her life? Zhang Yingying's words were stern and sharp. One glance was enough to tell that she had done her homework. The current process is to first discuss, form a hot topic, and then answer it. This is the correct path. What if you can't answer it? Hee. Ha, your sister. Shui Lei, who was watching from the side, could not bear to watch. He reminded him, did you forget what Teacher Kardashian said before? Cough, the matter has not been concluded yet. I'm just providing a way of thinking. Well, is that okay? Luo Nan was delighted. He slapped Shui Lei's arm heavily. You're too good. Zhang Yingying sneered. Luo Nan suddenly felt something strange a few seconds later. He scanned his group of friends and saw that the move Shui Lei had just taught him was being replayed in the group. Below was a string of people pounding the ground while laughing wildly. There were people joining in endlessly. The formation was neat. Bamboo Pole, the cynical man with a high IQ, was the last to speak. I've just written a small automatic analysis program. You can just download it from the group. It works wonders with the Hexier. We can see how many similar keywords and key sentences Professor Luo will say in one lecture. A bunch of people applauded and praised. The 10-second man truly lives up to his name. Luo Nan had a mental breakdown. Zhang Yingying, what the hell are you doing? Zhang Yingying giggled and waved her hand. There's only one thing I'm trying to say. Communicate well with Worker Zhai and do your teaching plan seriously. Don't think too much about it. Everyone has their own specialties. At present, you'll have a better future as a lecturer and swipe credit cards for everyone. The conversation ended. Luo Nan sat on a chair and let out a long breath. There was something he really wanted to say, but in the end, he kept it in his stomach. Did a certain someone misunderstand Her Majesty Empress Wu's intentions? Shui Lei was very confused. What does swiping credit cards mean? Cat Eyes giggled as she answered, basically, the boss is currently providing remuneration for around half of the Xia City branch members. You can look at his credit card bill for the specifics. Luo Nan's lips twitched. He was too lazy to respond. At the same time, he knew that what Cat Eyes said was more or less the standard answer. Zhang Yingying's intentions were very simple. It didn't matter if Luo Nan wanted to become a one-man enemy or a 10,000 enemy. With his current strength, he still needed to carry out relevant designs within the framework of the Xia City branch. He proposed ideas and paid remuneration. The Xia City branch was responsible for carrying them out, as long as his credit didn't go bankrupt. This seemed to be in line with Her Majesty Empress Wu's train of thought, but Luo Nan really wanted to say, formatting theory and the Xia City branch's operating model are ultimately different. What Her Majesty Empress Wu wanted to see most likely wasn't how Luo Nan would play around under the latter's constraints. She wanted to see how Luo Nan would come up with a more novel and valuable framework system. Right now, Luo Nan needed to ponder over what he could bring out for others to see, and what he could hide. Of course, this was not an easy task. Hey, Nanster, your face is too red, right? Shui Lei discovered a new situation. Oh, it's nothing. Luo Nan subconsciously touched his face as he spoke. It really was a bit hot. You didn't feel anything at all before? Did you have a fever? Shui Lei grew serious. He reached out to touch Luo Nan's forehead. We martial artists either don't get sick, or when we get sick, it's a serious illness. The imbalance of body and defense, the chaotic flow of blood. These are great benefits normally, but when you get sick, you need to get them all back. The gym master often tells me about these things. You haven't been by her side for long, so I'm afraid that you don't know her well enough. Luo Nan was quite confident in his own state. He laughed and shook his head. It's really nothing. To the side, Cat Eyes was attempting to entice Rui Wen to open his mouth and speak. She saw that the two men were unable to talk clearly, so she sneered and said, maybe it's because his business is too big and he worries too much. For a while, he's feeling stifled. Luo Nan glared at her, but Shui Lei was very much in agreement. Thinking too much isn't a good thing. You need to pay more attention to your emotions. Shui Lei was helpless when it came to touching upon the core issue. He knew what sort of situation Luo Nan was facing right now, but he was unable to play a decisive role in a confrontation of this level, even though he could lend a hand. Luo Nan's complexion had already returned to normal while they were talking. But what Cat Eyes had said before was correct. He was indeed under astonishing pressure. And this pressure was brought about by the stall he had set up, some sort of order framework. Luo Nan was not limited to the framework of the Xia City branch, but he did not purely use the framework of formatting theory as his main force. To be precise, what he was using right now should be the altar framework. Yes, the altar framework that came with the fluttering curtain of rain silently covered all of Xia City and even the surrounding areas. It was the Wraith Sign's own altar framework. It was a system of rules where the winner takes all and the loser perishes. Compared to the emptiness and chaos of the formatting theory framework, this bizarre framework that had accomplished many meritorious deeds was more realistic. The Wraith Sign shuttled back and forth day and night for 2 days. It weaved an invisible spider web that penetrated the hearts of the people within the enormous Xia City. Thanks to Her Majesty Empress Wu, she informed Luo Nan of the identities of the capital spokespersons, brokers, and officials. She also allowed Luo Nan to grasp a bit of thread. Using this as a basis, Luo Nan extrapolated layer by layer, exposing a large amount of hidden details and veins. Luo Nan did not let a single one of the people connected, hung, or strung together. Luo Nan let the wraith sign move freely. From ability users to normal people, from soldiers to officials, from capital spokespersons to various interest groups, as long as it could permeate, the wraith sign would visit them one by one. It rapidly spread. The results were plentiful at this moment. That's right, the results were plentiful. It was easy to talk about, but one had to actually put it into action. In the hearts of tens of thousands of people, including the hearts of the powerful individuals whose strength was above Luo Nan's, the invisible poisonous threads were absolutely not an easy task. The wraith sign was able to do this because Luo Nan was forced to do it. Luo Nan was able to point out a direction because he was forced by the environment. He couldn't be considered to be a particularly intelligent person, but the terrible environment forced him to think. He pondered over whether or not there was a consistent clue amidst the waves of unrest. Was there a core that he could grasp? He thought to himself at first. Roy Wen was Miss 2000s. She appeared to be the core pursuit of all actions. He and his relatives were merely a stepping stone to realizing this pursuit. But upon closer examination, could Roy Wen be the ultimate pursuit of those people? Clearly not. Those people had captured Roy Wen, and they wanted to exchange her for the legendary 16 billion or 2000s. They wanted to use her as a stepping stone to seek an even higher level of benefit and authority. And so, one level after another. One step after another. There was no end to it. And at the end of the boundless stairway to heaven, there was a faintly discernible silhouette projection. It was nothing more than the word benefit. Luo Nan didn't dare to say that he had seen through something, but he was indeed forced to come to a realization. All powers, all powerful enemies, from beginning to end, were nothing more than people who pursued benefit. It was said, the world is bustling with activity, all for benefit. The world is bustling with activity, all for benefit. It was hard to differentiate. Reality proved that the core of the clue Luo Nan grasped was not misplaced. The human-faced arachnid possessed terrifying instincts. It had infiltrated its way down through this channel, eroding the hearts of people. It was successful in every endeavor. With the fetters of benefit, the incorporeal spider silk was able to form firm reins. From this, it formed an enormous spider web that covered the entirety of Xia City. It pierced into the hearts of tens of thousands of people, endlessly expanding. The area covered by the spider web was the location of the law of the altar. The people of the world sought benefit, and the altar gave it to them. This wasn't an incorporeal benefit. It wasn't a petty benefit. Instead, it was a great benefit that truly pointed straight to the core of life. It was the highest level of benefit that Luo Nan could give. Luo Nan's eyes widened slightly. The vast void that his mind touched was covered with layer upon layer of spider webs. They reached up to the heavens and down to the earth, connecting to the hearts of people. Pure life force flowed within this complex web that was indistinguishable from reality. It was to the extent that every thread and every corner of this complex spider web system was dyed with an endlessly fluctuating bloody light. The spider web was also a transportation network. Within the area covered by the law, it truly extended in all directions. There was no place it couldn't reach. Luo Nan used benefit to knock down the defenses of the hearts of tens of thousands of living beings. At the same time, he bestowed the convenient services of this transportation network, under the basic rule of, the winner takes all, the loser dies. The purest and most valuable part of the vitality essence of every loser in the system would be instantly transmitted to all the survivors, and they would share it and eat it together. Everyone was like this. There was no difference. Luo Nan had conducted tests in both the open sea and the inland at the same time. He was certain that the slaughter directly formed by the puppet Mo Luan was recognized by the system of rules under actual combat conditions. There were no problems. The chaotic warfare indirectly controlled by the believer base was also okay. Of course, Luo Nan needed to test further relationships to see whether or not the system could still achieve the desired results. But for now, Luo Nan had already gradually tightened the encirclement and suppression of Xia City. He had initially evolved it into a sacrificial activity under the framework of the altar. Within this domain, everyone used their own lives as sacrifices. They were placed on the altar, even though they were completely unaware of this. Everyone had ample opportunities to obtain benefits that exceeded imagination from the established rules, even though they were still ignorant and unaware. Right now, it was hard to say who held the advantage. But one thing was clear: practically all the hunters had already been incorporated into the system of rules that Luo Nan controlled. They had to act according to the rules that Luo Nan had drawn out. Thus, Luo Nan's framework of being a match for 10,000 was accomplished. Chapter 539. Finally, they finished their lunch with much difficulty. After the meal, Chinikuan and Gauda went to arrange the security team's shifts. Cat Eyes began to fulfill her babysitting duties. She tried to get Roy Wan, who was used to being cold and aloof, to integrate into the large group as soon as possible. Shui Lei originally had something he wanted to discuss with Luo Nan, but worker Zhai called at this time to discuss matters regarding tonight's gathering. Everything else was fine, but Di Weiwu had the temperament of a child. Some things slipped out of his mouth. Even if everyone had a tacit understanding, it would still be a bit awkward. Worker Zhai and Luo Nan set up a few topics in advance. When the time came, they would do their best to lead in that direction. After talking for a while, they naturally entered the domain of the class and discussion on the night of the 14th. In any case, Worker Zhai was a guest teacher of a large society of Acumen College. He had plenty of experience in training and teaching. He saw that Luo Nan was a bit scared, so he gave Luo Nan an idea. "I'll write down my thoughts first. Later on, we can discuss seriously based on this draft. Let's see if there are any areas that are more meaningful or controversial. We can use this to extend the main points and outline of your class. Actually, this is exactly the same as tonight. I'll be the assistant. You'll be the main speaker. I'll guide. You expound. We'll work together to fool." Luo Nan expressed his thanks again and again. He made a preliminary appointment with Worker Zhai. They would meet on Wednesday, which was the night of the 12th. They would pull an all-nighter and finish all the teaching materials. They would set aside a day for Her Majesty Empress Wu to review it. Then they would go to the execution grounds. No, to the lectern. The call ended, and Luo Nan got up and stretched his back. He habitually performed 2 stretching motions. After Gym Master Xiu's training, Luo Nan was able to perform similar motions in a professional manner. As his limbs moved, his entire body's joints, muscles, bones, skin, and so on contracted and relaxed. His blood energy rose and fell, so much so that he could hear the gurgling sound of blood flowing. This had nothing to do with guiding. In a second or two, Luo Nan's cheeks, neck, and even his shoulders and back, which were covered by his clothes, were covered with a layer of bright red light. The surface temperature of his body rose a bit, and he even felt a bit swollen. Fortunately, he discovered it early this time. When he closed his eyes, the divine will and body will were coupled together. His internal organs, tendons, bones, meridians, and acupoints interacted with each other. Yin and yang rose and fell. This sudden surge of vital energy circulated and spread to his limbs and bones to strengthen his foundation. Sigh. Shui Lei opened his mouth, but then cut it off. He felt a little awkward, as though he was crying wolf. This was already the second time he had seen Luo Nan's face turn red. But this time, it dissipated even faster. It nearly made him think that it was an illusion. "Are you blushing again?" Luo Nan knew that Shui Lei was worried. He simply gave Shui Lei a vague explanation. "Maybe it's because I've been trying to couple my body and soul to a deep level for the past 2 days. But now that I'm awake, I feel like I'm improving very quickly." On the other side, Cat Eyes was sitting next to Roy Wan. Wen Yen shot a glance over and sneered silently. Luo Nan's skin was getting thicker and thicker now. He turned a blind eye. Actually, this current phenomenon was due to the problem that Cat Eyes had just pointed out. The stall was too large. The altar frame needed to be erected, and Luo Nan needed to bear enormous pressure. But he really did use his identity as the provider and defender of the frame order to enjoy transcendental privileges. Due to the existence of the rule of winner takes all, the altar frame system allowed people to die and their life force to be stripped away. This portion of energy could not be extracted. Instead, it would continue to be assimilated into the frame, stimulating and strengthening all the surviving participants. Everyone was treated equally. But the problem was that when people entered the altar frame, it was like entering a casino. Of course, there was the possibility of profit, but they would also have to pay service fees and administrative fees for this possibility of falling from the sky. Plus, Luo Nan's own closed system was interspersed within. A considerable portion of the hidden benefits seeped through the drip irrigation. Little by little, they accumulated. The Wraith sign didn't seem to care much about all of these benefits. He just helped the Blood Soul Temple devour a bit, realizing replenishment. The rest went through the large production line of the closed system, undergoing purification and assimilation into Luo Nan's boundlessly vast God Gear icy ocean. A portion was offered to the soul cloak that continued to expand, and the rest was coupled to drive the body gear to revolve. The gear set of the God Gear and body gear seemed to have been added with maintenance fluids and lubricants. It was also like a layer of furnace fire was wrapped around it, nourishing and tempering it without end. This was the part that Luo Nan told Shuelei. The 9 orifices and 6 roots pattern ensured the efficiency of absorption and the direction of advancement. Gym Master Shio once modestly said that there was nothing more he could teach Luo Nan. But the basic pattern he helped Luo Nan establish was one of the most important links in this virtuous cycle. This brought about a change in Luo Nan's root receptacle, a positive change in quantity, and even a change in quality. Luo Nan didn't know what his current progress was when it came to purely calculating the power of the body and soul structure. After all, this was not a game. Everything could be digitized. However, the analysis progress of a few new elements in the virtual brain interface was extremely clear, and it had increased by a large margin. This was especially true for the Blood Soul Temple and the Mo Luan puppet. They seemed to be quite fond of this. After some replenishment, the analysis progress of both broke through 10% in a single morning. But none of this could compare to the inconceivable bug in the Jintong's psychic light seed. Its analysis progress had already reached 90%. Though the speed had slowed down, it had not stopped yet. And this was not all. Luo Nan discovered an hour ago that the external neurons seemed to have been touched by a certain link within. Electricity spread out, and a new round of searching began. This time, the search was no longer limited to the closed system. It spread out. Fortunately, it was quite hidden. It was like the most ordinary electromagnetic wave of the current era. Its source was obscured, and it relied on the spider web of rain that covered the entire city to spread outwards. Luo Nan combed through the internal and external situation, and he could not help but sigh. Of course, it was good to have this kind of progress, but could he just ignore it once he had made an in-progress discovery? He no longer held any illusions regarding his journey over the next few days. With this intensity and density, even if his organizational coordination technique was upgraded to another level, it would still not be enough. At this time, Shuelei finally walked forward. At the same time, his gaze swept a circle into the distance. He knew that it was unnecessary, but he still lowered his voice. Nanster, I just so happen to have something to tell you. Luo Nan had long since sensed that Shuelei had something to say. He immediately nodded and sat with Shuelei in the coffee corner of the hall. This place was originally a good place to enjoy the bright and beautiful sunlight, but right now, all he could see were the raindrops pounding against the window. Shuelei spoke just as they sat down. I was chatting with the gym master yesterday. The old man advised me that I should put a portion of my energy into human-computer interaction in the future. Luo Nan was already used to being distracted and considering other matters. Even with his organizational coordination technique, his reaction was still a beat slower. He subconsciously repeated, human-computer interaction? It's like an exoskeleton or something. Shuelei lowered his voice even more. He was even a bit embarrassed. Luo Nan immediately understood. Deep Blue Walker? This time it was Shui Lei's turn to blush. Luo Nan laughed in spite of himself when he saw Shui Lei's reaction. Do I look very narrow-minded? He then nodded after teasing Shui Lei. The gym master's suggestion is certainly correct from a practical point of view. God was the strongest of the several burners in the security team. His strength was roughly C after undergoing transformation. But with Shui Lei's current abilities, he would be able to win if he were to fight God barehanded, even if God had an advantage in combat experience. After all, Shui Lei's close combat ability had already broken through the limits of ordinary people under Gym Master Xiu's tutelage. He didn't dare speak of his architect rank, but he had definitely reached the C+ level. It was the highest level among awakened. But if God were to wear the Deep Blue Walker exoskeleton, Shui Lei wouldn't even have the chance to escape if the two were to fight again. This was the power of technology and the flourishing development of the archetype format theory. It was a bonus to individual combat power. A fleshly ability user like Shui Lei lived in the worst era, but it was also the best era. The upper limits of traditional martial arts were unable to cross the barrier formed by technology. But the environment that nurtured ability users, as well as the development and growth of theories like the archetype format, allowed them to seamlessly connect with the most cutting-edge technology of today. This was the great framework of today's world. Only by entering it could one obtain the greatest bonus. Luo Nan didn't enter this framework, but he wouldn't deny that this path was correct. Shui Lei's worries were uncalled for. Luo Nan himself couldn't avoid seeking inspiration from the archetype format. What qualifications did he have to obstruct Shui Lei's path of advancement? Therefore, he didn't speak hypocritical and emotional words. Instead, he cut straight to the point. It seems that the Deep Blue Walker is unavoidable. Does it not affect your previous cultivation? Shui Lei let out a sigh of relief when he saw Luo Nan's reaction. He replied, it's impossible to directly go and transform it. The gym master wants me to first observe and experiment. I want to treat the format of fire as a cultivation model to research. Therefore, I want to first discuss and compare notes with Brother God. Luo Nan nodded and raised his own suggestion. You can also use the burner simulator researched by the military and Quantum Corporation. They have it at Frost River Reality. If you need authority, you can just apply to the society. You can also report to the military. I'm afraid that they're looking forward to having a martial imparting expert like you as a guinea pig to provide experimental data. Luo Nan suddenly thought of Bai Xinyan as he spoke. It was this female doctor who used the burner simulator to reveal to him the unstoppable development of the archetype format. But according to authoritative intelligence, Bai Xinyan was the main culprit that caused all of the current troubles. Even Mr. Bai had solemnly apologized to him for this. Luo Nan had a general understanding of the reason why this father-daughter pair had a falling out. It was impossible to say that Luo Nan didn't hate her, but Luo Nan still wasn't used to the rhythm of changing identities between friend and foe. He wasn't used to it, but it didn't hinder his cognition. It also didn't bring him too much trouble. Chapter 540. Luo Nan used benefits as a primer to successfully infiltrate the human-faced arachnid's poisonous silk into the hearts of the millions of people in Xia City. This showed that his train of thought was correct. It was just that everyone chased after different benefits during the specific implementation. What they were sensitive to and what they were desensitized to were all different. The Wraith sign was the one who truly dealt with these detailed problems. This inconceivable demon had already surpassed the limits of Luo Nan's understanding of how to infiltrate layer by layer and how to succeed. He could only sit back and enjoy the fruits of others' labor. But in his subsequent observations, he discovered that specific to the region of Xia City, specific to this 2 out of 1,000 incident, the ever-changing benefits naturally condensed into a few typical images and symbols. After all, humans were more accustomed to drawing on concrete images to think about things. Roy 1 and Luo Nan were undoubtedly the clearest two of them. When the poisonous silk infiltrated the hearts of people, it adhered to greed and evil thoughts. Layer by layer, Luo Nan naturally sensed it. When a person was being targeted by hundreds and thousands of malicious thoughts at all times, they would either become numb or extremely sensitive. Luo Nan was certainly unable to become numb, so he became exceptionally sensitive to these muddy flows of sand and mud. From Luo Nan's perspective, the sacrificial framework was like a transparent cup of water. As time passed, the countless participants were like muddy water in the cup, slowly settling and purifying. What was clear and what was turbid were all revealed in sequence. Under these circumstances, Luo Nan was simply playing a traditional online game. Red, yellow, blue, and white names hung above the heads of the players. It was bizarre and absurd. It was said that the human heart was hard to fathom, but it seemed that there was no place to hide under the ruler of benefits. Though it was only limited to greed and malice toward him. Luo Nan understood this as the function of order. After order formed a relatively complete framework, it combed and cleansed all living things. Under this standard, the hunters that flocked in were insatiably greedy. There were apathetic professionals. There were those who came to have fun and join in the fun. There were all kinds of them, and they were all different. The Xia City branch was not a monolithic block. There were warm-hearted people, indifferent people, two-faced people, and people who only had the thought of currying favor and making money. Johnny and Metalbox, who died in the inn, were just two examples. Deaths were not uncommon in a group of nearly 1,000 people. It was impossible for Luo Nan to hope that everyone in the Xia City branch would love him, that everyone would be like He Yuan, Zhang Yingying, and these other friends, who would do their utmost for him. Her Majesty Empress, who had already given him a reminder, pointed him in the right direction, and even helped him open up the credit system, allowing him to use real benefits to consolidate the power of the Xia City branch. Luo Nan received the lesson, but he could completely build on this foundation to do even more things. He could do even greater things. The puppets and believers were in charge of the specific planning and execution. For the time being, Luo Nan only needed to support the maintenance framework before the even more desperate situation arrived. He also needed to remotely command and make adjustments. At this time, he was very happy to go with Shuelei to find God and discuss matters related to the burners and the deep blue walkers. God was a veteran burner. Although he had already retired from the military, he was still inextricably linked to it. He told Shuelei frankly, the military's Deep Blue Walkers project has always been conducting research on imparting martial arts to the fleshly body. However, if you want to participate deeply in it, you'll definitely need to be registered in the military, and you'll also be subject to many restrictions. Quantum Corporation definitely has it, but the corresponding binding agreement isn't easy either. Aside from this, there was also the Frost River Reality Project, which was a collaboration between many powers. The project was relatively deep. Therefore, he was the same as Luo Nan. He recommended Shuelei to start with a professional simulator to get a feel for it. Then Shuelei and God discussed the similarities and differences between the internal energy of a burner and the internal refinement method of imparting martial arts. This had already entered a more professional level. Luo Nan very rarely interrupted, but he combined his experiences with the burner simulator with the two sides. He listened with great interest. However, they did not chat for long. God had to go deal with the security team, so the chat could only be interrupted. Shuelei had an expression of wanting to continue. His fighting spirit had already been provoked. He pulled Luo Nan and said, "Why don't we practice some Sanzhou?" Luo Nan was about to agree when Cat Eyes shouted, "You too! Come over and help." Huh! Cat Eyes and Roy Wen had been at loggerheads ever since she received the mission the night before yesterday. She took care of Roy Wen, and she liked Roy Wen. However, she was still a bit dissatisfied with the little girl's cold and distant attitude towards life. She always wanted the little girl to do something. After unremitting efforts, she finally found a pretty decent entry point after lunch today. She pointed to the side of the living room on this floor. There was a photo frame that had just been placed there not too long ago. She giggled and said, "Look. The design on the photo might be a tradition of their Luo family." The photo Cat Eyes pointed to was the weird photo of his grandfather and father that Luo Nan had copied from his uncle this morning. No matter how tangled and complicated his heart was, Luo Nan still treasured this photo very much. He specifically found an electronic photo frame to place it in. However, he had not yet decided whether he should place it in his home or place it in the space of the dead tree with his mother's photo. He could only place it in the living room on the 4th floor of Gear. This was the place with the best lighting in Gear under sunny weather. Cat Eyes did not care about the tangled feelings in Luo Nan's heart. She seized the opportunity to urge him with all her might. What do you mean by tradition? You pose according to the photo, I'll take a photo, and then we'll put it together. You don't even need to wait until the evening gathering. You'll be considered a member of the Luo family. As for whether you'll be a daughter or a child bride in the future, it's all a trifle. Cat Eyes revealed her intention to tease Luo Nan, but Rui Wen naturally did not respond. Cat Eyes teased Luo Nan several times to no avail, but she did not give up. Her eyeballs swiveled, and she called out to Luo Nan and the others, Rui Wen says that the restoration of a single pose isn't enough. Someone with the surname Luo, come over here. Is it really okay for you to tamper with right and wrong in front of your own boss, a mental sensing expert? But no matter what was said, Cat Eye's thoughts and actions were all for Rui Wen's good. If Luo Nan could help this little girl integrate a step further into this society, then Luo Nan really wouldn't mind making a few weird faces. So Luo Nan's ridicule was ridicule, but he did not refuse. He obediently walked over and revealed a smile to Rui Wen. Then how about we pose together? Rui Wen's clear and tranquil eyes streaked across his face. It was impossible to tell what she was leaning towards. But Cat Eyes tricked him again at this time. In the end, she did not let Shuelei go. Why don't you guys go first and demonstrate once to dispel the child's nervousness? First your friend Luo Shuepei, then your family member Luo Ruipei. There's nothing wrong with that. Shuelei's temper did not care, but he was reminded by Cat Eyes' abbreviation. He suddenly had a strange thought. When we adopt her, will Rui Wen still be called Rui Wen? Will she be called Luo Rui Wen at that time, or will she follow Uncle Luo Nan's surname and be called Imo Rui Wen? Luo Nan discussed with him very seriously. The name is just a symbol, but those two are quite hard to pronounce. Cat Eyes sneered. Don't deliberately change the topic. Do you think I don't know what you guys are thinking? Go, stand in front of the photo frame. Split into two sides. Luo Nan on the left, Shuelei on the right. Pose properly. Shuelei grinned and looked at the photo again. His eyelids twitched. We agreed that it's a demonstration. No photos. Don't talk nonsense. Hurry up and go. Luo Nan and Shuelei were truly in a difficult situation. They glanced at each other, but they were helpless. They could only follow Cat Eyes' instructions and stand on the two sides of the electronic photo frame. They followed the poses of the two people in the photo frame and slightly staggered their angles. Then they continued to communicate with their eyes. You first. You first. Everyone together. Okay. That kind of pose only looked funny on the photo. If they really had to do it, and if they were to do it properly, it would be truly shameful. It would have been fine if Luo Nan and Shuelei did not exchange glances. But when their gazes met, they laughed until they staggered left and right a second later. There was no hope for any other pose. As their coach, Cat Eyes was extremely dissatisfied. She clapped hard. You two idiots. What happened to being role models? Luo Nan was waiting for these words. You're the coach. You're the role model. Why don't you come up and try? From Luo Nan's perspective, this was a sharp counterattack. But reality proved that he was still too young. Young. Cat Eyes' eyebrows shot up. No problem. As an outstanding dancer, Cat Eyes could unlock all sorts of poses at any time. She felt no pressure at all from a small comedy scene. Watch closely. Cat Eyes calmly took off her jacket, revealing a skin-tight protective suit. She stepped forward and pushed Shuelei aside, standing face to face with Luo Nan. Then she raised her left leg and hooked it backward. She raised her right hand up, assuming a reverse joint position. Her left arm extended backward, and her right knee bent inward. It was as if her entire body had been frozen in a high-speed rotation. This posture was awkward no matter how one looked at it. It was funny no matter how one looked at it. But Cat Eyes was an outstanding dancer. She used these elements to perfectly portray the flexible and graceful posture of a woman. Especially since she was still wearing the skin-tight protective suit. Her undulating curves and soft waist made the two men in the room not know where to place their eyes. Luo Nan thought about how it was hard to avoid making a fool of himself, so he seized the last bit of time he had to tease Cat Eyes. "Leister, where are you looking?" Shui Lei was innocently implicated, but the moment of crisis revealed his true colors. He directly responded, "Sister Cat Eyes' posture isn't precise enough." Luo Nan looked at Cat Eyes. Cat Eyes' posture was restored to its original state, and she raised her eyebrows. Shui Lei was right. She had indeed made some slight adjustments to her posture when she was imitating. After all, the sense of harmony and beauty of any plastic art was reflected in the details. Stiffness and gentleness were perhaps only a tenth of a curve, a hundredth of a millimeter. But she obviously wouldn't show weakness at this time. She forcefully retorted, "If you can do it, then go ahead." Luo Nan immediately seized the opportunity to pull away. Come. I'll give you this position. Compare." Cat Eyes gave him a supercilious look. Shui Lei had put himself on the stage with a single sentence. It was hard not to be embarrassed. Luckily, Cat Eyes had already demonstrated. Right now, they could be considered to be having a friendly professional exchange of pointers. In fact, he really did become a bit interested after the round of observation just now. "I think it should be like this." Shui Lei assumed the same posture as he spoke. He was over a head taller than Cat Eyes. His body was majestic, but his flexibility wasn't the least bit inferior. He wasn't the least bit afraid of the posture that Cat Eyes could assume. But when he assumed the proper posture, it really did make people feel a bit different. "Oh, it seems like it really is a bit." Cat Eyes rubbed her chin as she circled around Shui Lei. She might have been joking a bit at first, but she unconsciously became serious later on. "Is this the limit of the joints? Your ligaments are quite taut." Shui Lei maintained his posture without changing. He responded, "It's all right. This posture is actually quite reasonable. The limbs are relaxed, and the tendons and arteries receive force. If you do Daoyin or yoga, you can coordinate this posture with the starting and ending posture. It can still provide a certain amount of exercise." "Huh?" Luo Nan's heart inexplicably jumped. Cat Eyes shook her head. "There's no need to force your way up. There's no utilitarian meaning." "Hey, what the hell are you doing?" Luo Nan was secretly trying it out, so he was naturally discovered. Luo Nan's face heated up under Cat Eyes' mocking gaze, but he still persevered. He searched for the feeling of the limbs being relaxed, and the tendons and arteries receiving force that Shui Lei spoke of. His thoughts drifted a bit. Grandpa and that person might joke around, relax, and the like, but if they really did leave something for me, wouldn't it have a deeper meaning? Luo Nan also felt that he was reading too much into it, but the external neuron left behind by a certain person was far too mysterious and marvelous. The method was far too secretive. It gave him a bad precedent. Give it a try. There's nothing wrong with giving it a try. Cat Eyes could not help but roll her eyes. Do you really think this is a secret martial arts manual? Can you find out the true meaning of formatting theory from this? Luo Nan's face really turned red this time. He really did have similar thoughts in the corner of his heart. Cat Eyes shook her head, but in the blink of an eye, she felt that this was a rare opportunity. Since Luo Nan had delivered himself to her doorstep, then he shouldn't blame her for being impolite. She giggled and retreated a few steps back. She prepared to find a good angle to take a picture of this rare scene. She had just chosen a position and gestured a bit. She could not help but laugh in spite of herself. "Hey, Roy One. You really can't wait to enter the Luo family's door." She saw Roy One, who was beside her, actually cast off her usual indifference. She copied the pose in the photo, twisting her body and exerting force. She stretched her arms and legs. Her usual wooden expression contrasted beautifully with the two serious faces in the photo. The more she acted like this, the more adorable she became. Cat Eyes laughed out loud. She formed a circle with her index finger and thumb, and the synchronized virtual lens centered around Roy-1. The three figures were encircled. She just needed to exert a bit of force with her fingertips, and the gesture response would be effective. She would record this rare scene. But at this moment, a low and deep sound wave permeated the room. The sound was like the rustling of rain falling on the eaves. It was dense like a tide crashing against the shore. For an instant, it was as if Cat Eyes was standing in the middle of a surging river. The sound of water filled her surroundings, and deep within, there was the sound of shrieking. Cat Eyes clearly wanted to exert force with her fingers, but they suddenly froze in this moment. It was hard to move an inch. Ouch! Luonan suddenly turned around, but he forgot his current position. He committed the lowest of mistakes. He sat solidly on the ground, ignoring the pain in his butt. He raised his head to look in astonishment. It was as if Cat Eyes had just woken up from a dream. She subconsciously exerted force with her fingers. Chapter 541. There's no need to dig into the so-called secrets of the posture itself. Everything about its form was already exposed when it was displayed. Even if it had the value of guidance, any guidance posture would only be meaningful in the complete system. If there's really something to this posture, then it could be a single moment of the entire movement. Moreover, there should be countless details hidden in places that we can't see, such as the corresponding breathing technique, the circulation of qi and blood in deeper organs, and even the coordination of spiritual methods. Shui Lei tried his best to convey and translate Jim Master Xiu's preliminary opinion. His mouth and tongue seemed to be cramping up, and it was extremely difficult for him to do so. However, there was no other choice. Jim Master Xiu didn't like using electronic devices, or rather, he couldn't use them. It was said that any electronic device on Jim Master Xiu's body would be destroyed in a few minutes. It was as if there was a powerful electromagnetic radiation source in his body that could destroy the intricate circuit structure at any moment. As for those explanations, they were naturally based on the funny poses in the photos. Luonan's group of people became restless from the great discovery they made at noon. They believed that they had cracked an absolutely enormous secret. But aside from Roy when succeeding a few more times, Luonan, Shui Lei, Cat Eyes, Qi Nikuan, God. Not a single person was able to replicate Roy Wen's results. As for Roy Wen herself, she was confused as to how such a miraculous scene had occurred and couldn't explain it. Luonan spent the entire afternoon in a trance. And as time passed, he became more and more irritable. He had obviously touched upon the core secret, but there was still a thin veil that he could not uncover. This feeling was too hateful. In the end, it was Shui Lei who suggested asking Jim Master Xiu about this. After all, this seemed to be the domain of body techniques. In this aspect, Jim Master Xiu could be said to be extremely authoritative. Luonan quickly agreed. He made a firm resolution in his heart. If Jim Master Xiu still couldn't decipher this, then he would consult Her Majesty Empress Wu and President Ouyang one by one. With the living example of Roy Wen, these apex figures should at least give him an explanation. After the afternoon classes ended and the club activity started, Shui Lei hurried back. Actually, Luonan wanted to go as well, but his aunt contacted him midway. She took half a day off this afternoon. She wanted to go to the Welfare Institute before dinner tonight. She wanted Luonan to accompany her. At the end of the day, his aunt would still be worried if she didn't do a proper investigation. Luonan was helpless. He could only finish the scenes in front of him. He was busy all the way until dinner time. Hall Master Xiu also found it difficult to make a decision. Luonan came out from the dinner table to pick up the phone. It was already 7 or 8 o'clock in the evening. Luonan's current state was very ordinary. His mental state was exerting a lot of energy. Even though he had been injected with stimulants, he still couldn't make ends meet. He tried his best to understand Gym Master Shio's explanation. He tried so hard that his temples were throbbing, but he still couldn't find any useful clues. He couldn't help but feel resentful. But Rui Wen's situation, as soon as the words left his mouth, Luo Nan thought of the most solid reason. Rui Wen was a special case. This was because her form and soul were blended. Her inside and outside were one. Her form and soul structure didn't even need to be fixed. She just needed to find the right frequency and self-adjustment, and her internal structure could be naturally formed. In fact, Rui Wen hadn't been able to succeed every time she had tried this afternoon. And the few times she had succeeded, there had been some differences in her state of mind. Luo Nan's mind was in chaos. He was at a loss. Especially when it came to details, devilish details. How did he know what the details were? There was no clue at all. If he had to figure it out, if he had to bypass all of this, was he supposed to first take Rui Wen as his teacher and learn the art of form and soul fusion? But someone like Rui Wen was 99% talented. Luo Nan pondered left and right, and his scalp stung. It was extremely unbearable. In this situation, it was most likely that the effects of the stimulant drug were already insufficient. Luo Nan calculated that there was around 50 hours until the drug was injected. It seemed that he would need to replenish it tomorrow. Shui Lei was still trying his best to translate Gym Master Shio's opinion. Right now, we can't dig out anything purely from the level of body arts. If you really want to continue, there's no harm in considering two aspects. Luo Nan's mind stirred, and his head hurt even more. He sucked in a cold breath and asked, hiss. Which two? The first one is still to use body arts as a base, but do the opposite. Connect with the outside world and walk the path of combining the inside and outside. This is one of the ideal theories for imparting martial arts. The most basic method is to combine the principles of Daoyin and Yoga. Start with the current breathing technique and make constant adjustments. Find a relatively reasonable point of convergence with the external environment. In this way, you need an environment overflowing with life. Right now, it's the middle of winter. Only the North Shore jungle is a bit better. But, cough. Gym Master says that this is like shooting a bird at random. It's like giving medicine to a dead horse. Luo Nan rubbed his temples and slowly nodded. This was indeed a path. The rarest thing was that Gym Master Shio had even thought of a specific method. It was quite feasible. As for the final evaluation, Luo Nan automatically ignored it. Shui Lei was silent for a moment. He seemed to have heard Gym Master Shio's words. Shui Lei then repeated, the second path. Gym Master says that perhaps your train of thought can be a bit more abstract. Luo Nan really didn't understand this time. Shui Lei was the same, so it was extremely awkward for Shui Lei to repeat. Gym Master means that if all attempts fail, there's no harm in introducing the elements of philosophical thinking. Introduce the posture into the theoretical system you're used to. Make it more abstract and concise. Even symbolization is fine. It's not limited to the realm of body arts. He says that you can understand. Luo Nan did understand a bit. Gym Master Shio wanted him to connect this posture with the system of formatting theory and expand his train of thought. Actually, Luo Nan had already done this when he discovered the uniqueness of this posture, but he still didn't have a clue. Shui Lei then said, Gym Master Shio said this much. Oh, as for Rui Wen's situation, it's best if you bring her over later. Let Gym Master Shio take a look. Gym Master Shio basically said this much. Luo Nan didn't get the information he wanted to hear the most, but it couldn't be said that he gained nothing. However, this consumed even more of his mental strength. The blood vessels near his temples pulsed even more vigorously after he hung up the phone. Luo Nan leaned against the wall of the corridor. He closed his eyes and regulated his breathing, allowing the information, thoughts, and stimuli to flow back and forth in his mind. He finally understood that the rhetoric of mentally and physically exhausted and lighting a lamp to boil oil was absolutely not an exaggeration from the people of the world. This was especially true when he had to consider more and more fields. The scope of his mental strength was like a smashed water tank. Its water level dropped rapidly at a visible speed. This was thanks to the altar frame feeding back vital energy. It was quite a supplement. Luo Nan thought about the things he had to pay attention to. The soul cloak had already traveled nearly 3,000 kilometers out of Xia City's outer sea. The spider web altar covered the entire city. The security monitoring of each and every one of his closest family members. The intelligence gathering of various enemies. The changes in the cloud world. The changes in the external neuron. The training of the overall planning technique. Luo Nan hadn't slept for nearly 90 hours since the 8th. He stopped his daily cultivation and focused all of his mental strength on the 2000th event. But even so, he still didn't have enough time. He didn't have enough mental strength. He didn't have enough planning. He didn't have enough strength. Only thoughts, exhaustion, and impatience overflowed in his heart. They boiled endlessly. This bunch of scum, both inside and outside the city. They never stopped. Why don't I just kill a bunch of them? I'll have some peace and quiet. Fellow student, are you okay? Luo Nan's situation was quite eye-catching. A waiter from this restaurant walked over and asked about Luo Nan's situation. Letting me have some peace and quiet is the greatest care you can give me. Luo Nan suppressed this sort of annoying ridicule back into his stomach. He opened his eyes and returned a smile to this kind waiter. I'm fine. Oh, worker Zhai. The door to the corridor opened, and worker Zhai walked out. Luo Nan was shocked. Could it be that there was a problem inside? Worker Zhai looked at Luo Nan's expression and laughed. It's fine. The atmosphere is quite good. Actually, Luo Nan didn't need worker Zhai to say anything. Luo Nan was able to confirm it with his mental senses. Luo Nan's senseless reaction could only mean that his mind was in a trance. His condition was terrible. Luo Nan wasn't willing to show negative emotions in front of worker Zhai. He took a deep breath and straightened his body. What made him rejoice was that the atmosphere of this family gathering really was quite good. The smart people were mentally prepared, and the confused people continued to be confused. As such, he could only pass this peacefully. But he never expected that his aunt's excessive worry would attract Di Weiwu, who unexpectedly became the key to livening up the atmosphere. From the little guy's point of view, the cold and aloof flat-chested sister was together with Luo Nan. Luo Nan was very powerful, so that person should be very powerful as well. The dean had hinted at this before. His cheap godfather and that magic-capable Uncle Papercut had touched on his life experiences and history when they talked. Luo Nan couldn't help but be in awe of this. Also, he just couldn't find a martial arts school. He might as well take a teacher nearby and learn how to fight. That would be good. Di Weiwu's childish words carried no harm. He snuck a sip of his alcoholic drink at the table. His mouth was even harder to control, but he suddenly broke the seal on the topic of the underground fighting arena. Everyone else was worried, but Rui Wen didn't mind at all. Speaking of which, Rui Wen was in an abnormal state tonight. Ever since she met with Madame Luo Shuqing in the afternoon, she actually opened her mouth. She didn't say much, but she did answer questions. Moreover, it was absolutely not a perfunctory response like yes or a no. It was usually a matter of a few words that could be thoroughly explained, and it displayed extremely shocking logic, comprehension, and even the ability to express. For example, before Luo Nan left the table, Mo Peng really couldn't hold back his curiosity. He used the reason of losing weight to ask Rui Wen about her combat training. Rui Wen answered with nutrition, focus, and talent. Her answers of 6 words directly killed Mo Peng as she explained the key points. Even if she cherished her words like gold, she still spoke more in this half-day than she did in the past few days combined. Luo Nan couldn't help but think. Was this change in Rui Wen driven by the environment? Or was it that incident at noon? Don't blame him for being oversensitive. Roy-won was always in deep thought after the incident. Even if she was still cold and distant to outsiders, it was absolutely different from her usual empty silence. Hell. He was thinking about that position again. Luo Nan's mind was in chaos right now. Thoughts from all directions came and went far too frequently. His mind wandered a lot as he chatted with Worker Jai. Worker Jai misunderstood. He laughed and said, "Don't worry. I see that your family's elders have a good impression of Roy-won. They take good care of her feelings. As for that older sister of yours, she has a strong sense of justice. Mo Peng has a very kind heart." Luo Nan forced a laugh. Worker Jai continued, "Besides, we won't immediately adopt her. There will always be a process of familiarity from being strangers. Take our family's Weiwu for example. He doesn't regard himself as an outsider at all. Well, I'm really afraid that he'll get hot-headed and say some unreliable things. Let's go back." "Yeah, okay. But you need to wash your face first. Rub it hard." "Huh?" Worker Jai pointed at his own face. "Today is a happy day. There should be a bit of color." So Worker Jai saw it all. Luo Nan smiled wryly. He first asked Worker Jai to go back. He ran to the bathroom and used hot water to wash his face. He did as Worker Jai suggested. He rubbed his face hard until his skin was red and hot. Only then did he turn back. By the time he returned to the room, most of the people had finished eating and left. They were sitting on the sofa in the room, chatting over fruits and desserts. The ones who spoke were mainly his aunt and Emoya. It was just as Worker Jai said. They took good care of Roy-won's situation. They didn't force Roy-won to talk. They didn't ask about her background or her background. Roy-won was sitting with Mo Peng and Di Weiwu right now. The two boys had their arms around each other's shoulders. They were making a big fuss as they played mobile games. However, Di Weiwu was quite forthright. He rested half of his body on Roy-won's lap so that his flat-chested sister could enjoy the wonderful game scene. Fine. This little Shoto was simply the closest person in the world to Miss 2 in 1,000. Roy-won returned to her quiet state. Perhaps she was used to being pestered by Di Weiwu, so her body language was very natural. Perhaps she thought that Di Weiwu, who was constantly chattering away, was a large crow. Luo Nan was a bit stupefied when faced with this situation. It was his aunt who called him over. She first asked him if he had eaten his fill. After getting an affirmative answer, she directly asked him about Roy-won's future plans. Roy-won is still young. She had a hard time in the past. She definitely needs a normal living environment. Family is one thing, but she also needs to interact with school and society. Which school do you think she should go to? What grade do you think she should start at? Be with me? Acumen College. It'll be easier to take care of her like that. His aunt smiled. She didn't comment. She asked, "Do you want to develop a hobby or something like that?" Luo Nan had a flash of inspiration when he heard her mention this. He thought of Gym Master Shio's instructions and made a comprehensive plan. Roy-won already has a foundation. I'll take her to see Gym Master Shio in a few days. He'll definitely be willing to give her pointers. Emoya sneered from the side. You're the one who represents everything. Why don't you see if the little girl is willing? I say, why don't you play music with me or something? Hey, don't you think Roy-won's voice is quite special? Luo Nan went, He was actually unable to refute. Speaking of which, he vaguely remembered that he had thought this the first time he saw Roy-won in the underground fighting arena. He was just about to discuss this when a stimulus suddenly shot out from his brain. It transmitted a completely new piece of information into his chaotic mental space. Chapter 542. Roy-won, we said we'd meet tomorrow. Moya smiled as she wrapped her arms around Roy Wen's slender shoulders and whispered in her ear to confirm. Roy Wen shot a glance at Luo Nan before giving a slight nod. His aunt frowned. This is a serious matter. Don't be so careless. No matter how you look at it, I'm still considered an outstanding graduate of Acumen College and a celebrity alumnus. Roy Wen is also still in compulsory education, so it's very simple for her to join a class. Moya made an okay gesture. She had already taken care of everything just now, handling Roy Wen's enrollment procedures and other matters. Madame Luo Shuqing reprimanded her verbally. In fact, among the 3 children, she trusted her eldest daughter to handle things, excluding the goddamn rock star. That was the end of tonight's gathering. It could be said that both the host and the guests enjoyed themselves. There was no need to mention Roy Wen's side. Uncle and worker Zhai were both technical personnel, and their way of thinking was very similar. Today, after a deep conversation, they unexpectedly hit it off very well, and the 2 of them drank a few more cups. It was hard to say when it came to techniques, but when it came to alcohol tolerance, it could be said that his uncle was completely defeated by worker Zhai, who had officially become an awakened. When the cold wind blew on him after he came out, he felt a little numb. In this way, even if the car had an automatic driving system, it would not be suitable for him to sit in the driver's seat. They came one after another. His uncle's SUV, his aunt's housewife's car, and Moya's sports car. They used a total of 3 cars. Let me do it. At the age of 16, one could already apply for a driving license for a smart car. Mo Peng had the authority in this area, but he usually didn't have the chance to do so. At this moment, he was exceptionally enthusiastic. Unfortunately, a remote driving function wiped out Mo Peng's little ambition. In the end, he only obtained the qualifications to be a puppet in the driving room. Luo Nan didn't care. In fact, he didn't even pay attention to which car he boarded in the end. At this time, his mind was occupied by the message he had just received. Almost all the mental energy he could spare was sent to it, but there was no result at all. His eyes were closed, but his consciousness was already connected to the external neuron and entered the Void Brain app. He wandered about in that extremely unfriendly interactive interface. It was from this interface that he received a notification. The analysis of the newly added element in this interface, which is the spiritual seed of Jin Tong, has reached 100%. Analysis completed. Alright, the above was just Luo Nan's imagination. God only knew what the hell the hieroglyphics on the pop-up window were. All Luo Nan knew was that when his telepathic thoughts connected to the projected icon of the soul light seed, he thought that a corner of the mysterious veil of the virtual brain app had finally been unveiled to him. But what he was faced with was yet another terrible text pop-up window. There was also an unreadable grayish-white color below. The words on the pop-up window were still indecipherable. Luo Nan was only left with 2 options of yes and no. One of the options was marked as the default choice. Other than the amount of text, this pop-up window was practically identical to the one Luo Nan encountered. Could it be that this app is here to mess with me? Right now, Luo Nan had already encountered 3 different pop-up windows in the virtual brain interface. The 3 groups of words were like 3 cold, high walls, blocking him from the core meaning, making it impossible for him to approach. Under the pop-up window, the unreadable grayish-white hue seemed to have gone in countless circles before returning to its original point. Does the app have a delete option? Luo Nan's heart was filled with resentment. He was disinclined to guess the true meaning of the pop-up window. He followed the default option and clicked on it. Then, a 4th pop-up window jumped out. WTF. Luo Nan smashed his seat heavily. He even cursed out loud in a moment of desperation. Humph. You dare to curse at me? Moya turned her head from the driver's seat. Her sharp and slender eyebrows shot up. Her expression was extremely dangerous. Luo Nan was sitting in Moya's sports car. Right now there were only him and Moya in the car. As the lead singer of a rock band, Moya's style of driving was like a violent storm. She took the lead right now, leaving the other 2 cars behind without a trace. Big sis, you're having fun. It'll be hard to be a security guard. Luo Nan sighed. He wasn't in the mood to play around with her. He just exhaled, slow down a bit. Sorry. I was distracted just now. Then you got fixed up by someone? Moya teased, but she really did slow down the car. Luo Nan was unable to explain this. Luckily, Moya didn't get to the bottom of things. She just changed the topic. Roy 1, I've fought for you to stay right under my eyes. As for the school, you deal with it yourself. Huh? But you're talking about, Moya lightly curled her lips, there are tens of thousands of outstanding alumni of Acumen School. How could they look up to a lowly singer like me? 2 days ago, I was able to ask a friend to help me out, but that friend recently ran off to the wilderness to do scientific research. If I were to ask someone else, my relationship wouldn't be that strong. I'd lose face if things went wrong. Luo Nan had practically never seen Moya display such a weak appearance. He couldn't react for a time. He finally replied with great difficulty, then what are you doing? Don't you have a bunch of scoundrel friends at Acumen School? Also, you can even order around the deputy director of the SCA. Those school directors of Acumen School don't count for much. Am I right, Mr. Luo? Okay. Actually, I just received a call from a certain manager. There's a last-minute appointment tomorrow. A group operation. We have to leave in the morning. It's useless to ask for leave. If I go back on my word now, I won't have the face to see the Empress Dowager. Luo Nan heard the word appointment and suddenly thought of a few eyes that had already been burnt into charcoal. Even though the person who came up with the idea had died, the various bosses had backup copies of their dirty tricks. It wasn't impossible for them to appear. But what could he say to Moya? He could only say a simple sentence, pay attention to safety. Yeah. You need to have a plan for your journey. He subconsciously sighed when he spoke to this point. However, the irritable mood in his heart dispersed quite a bit from this turbid breath. The current situation in Xia City was created by him. Naturally, he had to solve it. At this stage, his plan was still in its embryonic form. There was still a lot of work that needed to be done. The situation was becoming more and more complicated, more and more exhausting. Everyone else could get angry, but he couldn't. Why did it have to be like this? Wasn't it because of the flaws in his personal strength? If he really had Her Majesty Empress Wu. No, even if he had the strength of Jin Tong, it would be enough to suppress the overall situation. He researched the virtual brain interface and the external neuron for the sake of an opportunity to increase his strength. Looking at it this way, no matter how disgusting the virtual brain interface's changes were, as long as it was constantly changing, this opportunity would always exist. Why did he need to torment himself? Luo Nan's state of mind calmed down quite a bit as these thoughts circled around in his head. Moya didn't speak again, and the car returned to silence. Luo Nan naturally shifted his mind back to the virtual brain interface. The pop-up text window was still there, icy cold. There were 2 options, and one of them was selected by default. Luo Nan suppressed the mood in his mind. He followed convention and simply chose the default option. The interface switched once more. It was also in this instant that the hateful ash-gray color suddenly brightened. A new interface appeared above the icon of the soul light seed. The surface flickered with a dense white light. The faint light was like strands of fresh air seeping in from a closed cellar. It made his heart, which had been stifled for a long time, feel quite a bit more relaxed. This light is pretty weird. Another pop-up window popped up just as Luo Nan had this thought. 5 consecutive shots. Luo Nan's heart was filled with profanity, but it had already surged to the back of his throat. If it weren't for the effect of his previous self-explanation, it was hard to avoid losing self-control. Fortunately, there weren't any options on the pop-up window this time. It only flickered for a few seconds before fading away. But Luo Nan also noticed that the pop-up Windows panel was a bright and eye-piercing blood-red color. This had never happened before. It seemed to be some sort of warning. Then there were no more unforeseen changes. Luo Nan finally saw the interface of the virtual brain, which could be recognized and read. It didn't seem like anything new. The current interface gave Luo Nan a rather subtle feeling. He saw a simplified portrait of a human, broken down into several regional modules. This included the head, the torso, the limbs, and several other parts. Why did he go through so much trouble to describe it? This was simply the equipment bar of a game. Moreover, there were a few phantoms that resembled armor shells on the surface. When pieced together, it looked like the structure of some sort of exoskeleton equipment. In the game 10 Days in the Wilderness, the three categories of human heroes, Deep Blue, and Fantasy, all possessed this sort of UI interface. There was practically no difference. Luo Nan and Shui Lei often needed to use the Hero's Throne simulator of Frost River reality when they practiced extremely destructive Sansho techniques. Luo Nan was quite familiar with this. This toy couldn't possibly be a gaming device. Ha 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 ha. This isn't funny at all. Luo Nan really wanted to tear the external neuron apart and take a look. He wanted to figure out where all these twists and turns came from. And the main point was this: after analyzing Jin Tong's spiritual seed, an equipment bar like this appeared. No, the virtual brain interface. What sort of realistic meaning did this correspond to? Luo Nan pondered as he focused his consciousness on the chest area of the equipment bar. A subsidiary interface appeared without any sluggishness. An even more detailed equipment diagram appeared on top of it. Moreover, it was presented in the form of an assembly diagram. There were even drawings of parts dismantling inside. It looked extremely complex and professional. There's no need to plagiarize to this extent, right? Don't tell me I need to grind for parts next. A similar interface existed in the game 10 Days in the Wilderness. Its goal was to make players risk their lives to grind for parts and then upgrade their equipment. This interface of the external neuron. Oh, speaking of which, when was 10 Days in the Wilderness released to the market? Luo Nan quickly went online to search. The result he obtained was January 2094, which was 2 years ago. He searched further and found that the game was only established in the year 2092. By that time, the external neuron had already sat quietly in the flexible screen for an entire year. Where did the so-called plagiarism come from? Elements such as the Wraith Rune and the Bloody Soul Temple, which had nothing to do with each other, were all classified under this category. Luo Nan's heartbeat inexplicably accelerated. The external neuron's design had been deduced to this step. Wasn't it clear that they wanted to create an exoskeleton for the external neuron, for Luo Nan himself? Perhaps it was a special version of the Deep Blue Walker? That sounds good. But the problem was that he had no idea how to get started. Did he really have to follow this set of virtual blueprints, find a 3D printer, and build an exoskeleton from scratch? I was just thinking of playing just now. Before he could finish his thought, the external neuron in his brain suddenly emitted electricity. This light burst forth suddenly, and it directly interfered with the nerves of Luo Nan's brain in a very rare manner. Luo Nan's eyelids twitched. He was worried that something bad would happen, so his mind temporarily jumped out of the equipment interface to carefully observe the direction of the electricity. Luckily, the operation method of the electricity was quite reliable. It was the coupling method he was most familiar with and most suitable for him. It took a certain power of the external neuron and applied it to a portion of the neuron region that processed visual information, as well as a deeper layer of mental senses. As for what it was used for, Luo Nan blinked his eyes. There weren't too many changes in his field of vision, but on the mental plane, there were inexplicably many white dots flickering within the scene of the Soul Cape that covered Xia City. He subconsciously chose a dot and focused his mind, but what he saw were several fully armed soldiers. Looking at the insignia, they should be military elites that were temporarily dispatched into Xia City due to the state of emergency. They all wore the military standard eagle-shot light exoskeleton armor. Right now they were carrying out patrol missions in the vicinity of the city center. Right now Luo Nan was using his mental senses, but he still subconsciously blinked his eyes once more. His attention was completely absorbed by the white light that floated on the standard eagle-shot exoskeleton armor. The white light was concentrated on the waists of the eagle-shot exoskeletons. If one were to carefully discern it, they should be armor. No, they were individual life support modules hidden behind the armor. All the exoskeletons were like this without exception. Clearly, the external neuron was very interested in this module. Luo Nan memorized this module in his heart and shifted his senses. This time, he locked onto a military factory located in the outskirts of the city. There was an unending stream of production and assembly of various military components inside. He discovered another type of metal component here. He couldn't name it, but the white light piled up from similar products nearly dazzled Luo Nan's eyes. Without a doubt, this was the result of the electricity of the external neuron. It seemed to coat Luo Nan's sensory system with a layer of film, forming some sort of filter effect. Luo Nan used this to mark a few objects. Even if he used his toes to think, he would be able to guess that these objects were related to the assembly interface that Luo Nan had just discovered. This was indeed the case. When Luo Nan's consciousness returned to the assembly interface, two component interfaces popped up on their own. Their external appearances were basically similar to the modules and components that he had just discovered. Did he really have to go kill monsters and grind for components? If he gathered over 10,000 components, wouldn't he be able to summon the exoskeleton godly equipment? Luo Nan felt that he had inexplicably entered an absurd reality game. It was hard for him not to think. Why did the interface elements of the external neuron have such a high degree of similarity to the game 10 Days in the Wilderness? Whether it was 10 Days in the Wilderness or Frost River reality, they both had the shadows of the Star Alliance Committee, the military, and Quantum Corporation. What did this mean? That person. Was his father related to all of this? Luo Nan pulled out his notebook and solemnly noted it down. He would go back and collect detailed information on the 10 Days in the Wilderness game. Perhaps this would be an extremely important clue. Of course, the most important and most direct clue was still within his brain. In any case, the assembly interface of the virtual brain app had formed a connection with concrete objects in the real world through the use of the external neuron. It formed a correspondence, and it created a demand. Luo Nan's thoughts drew closer to the problem of reality. It must be said that the corresponding target of the assembly interface gave him a problem that was neither too big nor too small. It must be known that Luo Nan's mental senses, including the interference scene of his soul cloak, were the most sensitive to living beings. He could naturally control them into the living starry sky, saving him a lot of effort. But these components were all inanimate objects. It was not impossible to pay attention to them, but he needed to spare some extra effort. It was a bit strenuous for him to do so in his current state. He had roughly swept through 2 groups just now and he already felt tired. There were still tens of thousands of components left. Luo Nan reached out to pinch his eyebrows. It looked like increasing the dosage of the drug could not be delayed any longer. He immediately sent a message to Octopus. Octopus responded instantly. Octopus sent a sluggish emoji. Perhaps Octopus felt that it was not serious enough, so he enlarged the font in red and sent it over. Are you crazy? How many days has it been? Luo Nan responded, the main thing is that the effects are average, and the energy consumption is quite large. Octopus was very annoyed. Boss Luo. Boss Luo. You are an expert in nerve drugs. Can you not say such childish words? Just based on the amount of drug you injected last time, a normal person would have died 100 times over. It would take at least a week for the negative reaction to be eliminated. If you increase the dosage now. Do you think that neurons are crops that can grow crazily just by applying a bit of fertilizer? But if I don't replenish it in time, it will be useless when the inhibition effect comes out. If it's useless, then it's useless. What's more important than my life? Then I'll sleep for 6 or 7 days? Are you sure I won't sleep all the way to the Yellow Springs by then? Or maybe I'll wait to collect the corpses of my family, relatives, and friends? I want to ask. In the end, Octopus didn't give Luo Nan a definite reply. He just said that he had to report it to his superiors and that he could only reply tomorrow morning. Luo Nan estimated that the effects of the drug would be able to last until noon tomorrow, so he didn't force Octopus. I'll also mention it to Sister Yueyin. If she can't find Her Majesty Empress Wu or even President Ouyang. But bro Octopus, you'll need to concoct the relevant drug right now. Octopus replied hatefully, are you sure you can return it? Then he logged off and went to find someone. Luo Nan laughed and let out a breath. He went to study the assembly interface. But at this time, he suddenly discovered that there was a corresponding white light of a spare part not too far away from him. It was following him from beginning to end, practically in sync. He was almost home. Oh. Luo Nan's mental senses swept over. The carrier of the white light was actually the off-road vehicle that God drove. To be precise, it was a certain metal suitcase in the trunk of the car. Huh. Isn't that God's portable deep blue walker equipment? From the effects of the special filter, a considerable portion of its structure was suffused with white light. Hiss. Could this be directly used? They were both exoskeletons. How could the difference be so great? Could it be due to the archetype format? Luo Nan's mind shook, but he became absent-minded in the blink of an eye. How could the overlap rate be so high? What if? Luo Nan had already reached home while worrying about his gains and losses. He didn't say a single word as he returned to his room. He pondered for a moment, but in the end, he still gave He Yueyin a call. He first mentioned the matter of adding the dosage of the drug, but he didn't say too much about it. He didn't wait for He Yueyin's confirmation before he impatiently said, Sister Yueyin, I need a deep blue walker. I'm talking about the equipment. That's right. A complete exoskeleton armor. He Yueyin didn't ask Luo Nan what he wanted. She muttered to herself for a moment before responding, I really do hold a few quotas, but equipment of this level can only be purchased in the name of the society. This requires the approval of the finance committee. Luo Nan immediately understood, you want to find Her Majesty Empress Wu? You need a reasonable reason. He Yueyin sent over a spreadsheet as she spoke. Aside from the basic information, she also needed to fill in the reason for the application. Luo Nan looked at the specific instructions. This was simply more complicated than a feasibility study report or an application for funding. However, Luo Nan didn't think too much about the twists and turns. He was about to vomit from the torture of the virtual brain app. Therefore, he didn't even think about it. He just filled in the application form. As for the reason, it was settled in 2 words, prepare for class. Chapter 544. It had been snowing and raining in Xia City for nearly a week now. The ground and all sorts of buildings seemed to be permeated by the moisture. Many people complained that their entire bodies were rusty after a night's sleep. Their joints creaked and groaned. It was useless even if they turned the heating system to the max. There were even people petitioning on the government's website. They hoped that Xia City would use interference methods to disperse the rain and clouds so that the citizens could enjoy the warmth of the winter sun for a few days. On the Observing Faces show, the beautiful host used the tone of a script to chat with Phantom I Che-e. They talked about the weather and made it one of the topics of their conversation. Don't blame her for being a vase. Lord Ghost, I loved this. The eyes of this old and unruly extraordinary were always so lively. They wandered back and forth on the beautiful host's body. Oh my God. Miss Shan must be working hard to make this show in this damned weather. The beautiful host subconsciously drew her legs together. Her face revealed the professional smile that she was most adept at. It's all right. The sea is calm and tranquil. But it really feels different when I get ashore. Actually, this was a blatant lie. Ever since the luxurious cruise ship rented by the show arrived at the outer seas of Xia City, the beautiful host had been on the ship the entire time. She hadn't left even half a step. The other person who did this was Ghost Ai Che by her side. It was these two who spoke frankly and with assurance about the freezing rain in Xia City. The beautiful host began to enter the main topic. I've heard quite a few people say that the freezing rain in Xia City may be the result of some interference. After all, in an environment of -20 degrees, it is very difficult for a heavy snow to suddenly turn into continuous rain. What do you think about this? What opinion can I have? Currently, the Xia City branch has issued a denial order according to the emergency regulations. Ouyang and the martial monarch have endorsed this order. As a member of the society, I don't have permission. I don't have interview rights like you media, so I can only obediently stay in the outer seas. The rain in the outer seas has stopped for the past 2 days. The pitiful adaptability of the beautiful host was completely inadequate to deal with Ghost Ai's teasing. She was a bit stupefied for a moment. Fortunately, Ghost Ai beamed as he picked up the flexible screen next to him. However, there are quite a few comments on this matter on the internet. I like this one more. Moisture seems to be diffusing between the heavens and the earth, but in fact, it has already deviated from the laws of nature. It seems illusory yet real, unable to circulate. The beautiful host hurriedly followed. You mean, this freezing rain is man-made? How could I say that? I just read one line and felt that its syntax was quite neat. After that, Ghost Ai teased the beautiful host while saying some vague words. The topic of conversation shifted from the freezing rain weather to the high number of deaths and injuries in Xia City. These were clearly sensitive topics, but he was able to use glib words to bypass the most important points. He never revealed his true position. To put it simply, I have a lot of money, and I will never do anything that offends people. No wonder he chose Dan Yi, a pretty face. If it were someone as eloquent as Li Baizhou, Ghost Ai might not have come. Octopus pointed at the program while choosing the medicine. But most of the time, he was more interested in the appearance and figure of the beautiful host. According to him, in this kind of program where the content depends entirely on the guests, a vase is really more suitable. It must be said that Octopus was a very talkative person, but he was especially talkative today. He was even a bit talkative. It was most likely because he had injected the medicine again, giving him quite a bit of pressure. Luo Nan leaned back on the recliner and continued to adjust his breathing. A rack was set up on one side of the recliner. A complete set of monitoring equipment was placed there, and the corresponding sensors were connected one after another. Octopus was probably afraid that Luo Nan would be bored, so he opened the video of last night's face reading program. But Luo Nan didn't respond. Most of it was due to his lack of energy. It was 10 in the morning, and the school classes had yet to end. But medicine waits for no man. It was hard for Luo Nan to persevere. He needed to replenish his medicine immediately. For this reason, Octopus escorted the relevant equipment and medicine from the east of the city to the west of the city. The reward was 0. 5 honor points, which was 500,000 according to the market price. It was not an exaggeration to call this service a robbery. However, the one who set the price was the finance committee. If there were any doubts, they could appeal to Her Majesty Empress Wu. Besides, compared to the price of a set of deep blue walker equipment, this amount of money was nothing. Though Octopus was watching the program, most of his energy was placed on the monitoring data. He concocted the medicine while shaking his head. Don't blame me for being long-winded. This sort of continuous stimulation may not be fatal with your cultivation, but no one can tell the repercussions. Especially since you're on the mental side. Your brain is very precious. Since you're already here, what's the point of saying all this nonsense? Cat Eyes lay on the sofa, watching the program. The dancer's figure was actually a cut above that of the vase host. Unfortunately, Octopus didn't have the guts to watch. Cat Eyes' cultivation and temper had both risen recently, and she was moody. He was afraid of losing face by provoking her. Luckily, Cat Eyes was in a good mood right now. Hey, I'm passing by. Don't miss it. Roche Yoga First Stage, Jungle Shooting Bird Stance. It's very precious first-hand information. How about you give it to me? The price is negotiable. As Cat Eyes spoke, she minded her own business and switched the content of the projection in front of her. The display showed Luo Nan standing on one foot, twisting his neck and breaking his arms in a strange pose. The drizzling rain had drenched his hair, and even beads of ice had formed on it. It was both funny and embarrassing. This was the result of Cat Eyes' personal photography this morning. Back then, Luo Nan had taken a break from his busy schedule. After he arrived at school, he went to the northern shore jungle. He followed Gym Master Xiu's principle of combining the inside and the outside. He posed in nature in an attempt to probe the mysteries behind his grandfather and father's comical poses. Shuelei wasn't on guard against Cat Eyes, and he leaked the relevant words. Then, it spread throughout his circle of friends. Octopus was still picking and choosing. You've already posted these in the group. Is there anything more explosive? Cat Eyes gave him a sidelong glance. How about you drug him and let him run around naked outside for a bit? We'll record it when we get back. We'll split the profits 50-50. The two of them glanced at Luo Nan as they spoke. However, they didn't even roll their eyes at him, let alone get an echo. Right now, Luo Nan's hand was gently twirling a soft syringe. His eyes were fixed on the syringe. It was as if he wanted to unearth a forbidden secret technique to kill all the rebels within and outside of Xia City. He also seemed to be dispirited and helpless. His mind was faintly discernible, and his soul was wandering beyond the heavens. The two glanced at each other. At the same time, in a private chat channel on the Psychic Wave Network, information was displayed and refreshed layer by layer. See? I told you it was necessary. Is there a need to throw his life away? How could it be that serious? After all, we're doing this for his own good. Do you think we should make a move? I'm just a small fry. Yesterday I was a firefighter. Today I'm a bodyguard. Tomorrow I might even have to warm the bed. What qualifications do I have to speak? What's wrong with your mind? Speaking of which, do you really think you can make him sleep with you warming the bed? If you can do it, then don't look for me. Don't talk nonsense. Hurry up and get the person in charge. Sometimes this boss is simple and foolish, but sometimes he's as shrewd as a monkey. If you hesitate for too long and he sees through your flaws, then you're done for. Two simple words responded to Cat Eyes' long-winded speech. Inject. On the plane of reality, Cat Eyes gave Octopus a look. Her meaning was, oh, the vice president in charge has spoken. Octopus shrugged. He didn't hesitate any longer. He injected the prepared drug into Luo Nan. In the end, Luo Nan wasn't an omniscient god. He was completely unaware of the undercurrents operating on the Psychic Wave Network. His mind hadn't been idle since 100 hours ago, especially from yesterday afternoon until now. The trend of his activity was probably mysterious posture. Virtual exoskeleton assembly interface. Mysterious posture. Virtual exoskeleton assembly interface. This cycle went on without end. Occasionally, he would insert some adjustments to the situation in Xia City and the altar's framework. His mind was a bit restless and anxious due to the suppression effect of his cerebral cortex for the past 2 hours. He waited for the ice-cold drug to be injected into his blood vessels and take effect. Finally, he could relax his mind a bit. Some thoughts and emotions were like floating clouds that lingered in his mind. Luo Nan finally discovered that he was filled with envy and jealousy towards the archetype format and its accompanying deep blue walkers. He wasn't jealous of the combat strength of the deep blue walkers. He was jealous of the weapon platform behind it. It was a research system composed of the world's top scientific research power, the most top-notch talents, and the most extravagant resources. It was precisely because of this system that the archetype format was able to continuously develop, improve, and apply. How fortunate. And right now, the analysis process of the external neuron was presenting him with another system. Even though only a small part of the iceberg had been exposed, Luo Nan was able to get a glimpse of its grand, precise, and complete overall scale from the appallingly detailed assembly interface and the thousands upon thousands of various blueprints. Most importantly, it was impossible for it to correspond to the archetype format. It was certainly the genuine formatting theory. At least this was the case from what Luo Nan could see. Inconceivable. Luo Nan's mind hadn't stopped for even a moment since last night. Excitement, stimulation, and bewilderment formed a never-ending whirlpool of thoughts. How did this system come to be? Where did it come from? Was it the results of his grandfather's research back in the day? Or was there a deeper source? That fellow. His father. The reason why he sent the external neuron back was because it hid such an enormous secret? How did he discover it? How did he use it back in the day? Could the natural mode of words be overcome? Or was there a way around it? Could he obtain answers from the analysis and assembly process when faced with all sorts of puzzlement? Luo Nan didn't know, but he had already done it. Right now, he was twirling the soft needle tube. He was considering the problem of the muscle structure within the exoskeleton system. You're tuning in to the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.